it for several months now, so it's nice to see that this is all coming together. And over the past several months, as I've been doing this work for the city, trying to get the right stakeholders at the table and really trying to get to a place where we can solidify a vision and a plan for the city of Philadelphia on how it may continue moving forward to pursue a smart city initiative. It's been wonderful just to see all the different people coming together and really wanting to collaborate and putting down the barriers that we often talk about. So, you hear words like silos and being frustrated with, the old processes and policies that are in place. And I feel that we are currently now in an administration that is really welcoming a collaborative government system and wanting to make sure that folks are really communicating with one another, not just inside the departments and city government, but also with our external stakeholders as well. So all that being said, I'm going to be presenting to you the Smart City PHL initiative, which is the City of Philadelphia's official Smart City program. So what's the big picture for us? You see all these wonderful little icons around different things that people tend to latch onto when it comes to Smart City. Well, for us, everything needs to start with smart collaboration. And it's a buzzword, we talk about it all the time, but really, the more and more conversations I have, the more and more I find out that collaboration is still very, very challenging for a number of reasons. And one of the things that I know is going to be challenging also is to pursue really solid and sustainable P3 models, public-private partnership models, that city government can really take the lead on investing in and really putting solid and sound structure around so that we can pursue these larger infrastructure projects. From the collaboration, we're hoping to improve our efficiency. So how we're doing our business in the city government, how we're able to communicate with our citizens, how we're supporting our businesses in the community, and also how we're helping visitors, people who are new to Philadelphia, get around town. And from there, we hope that the efficiencies that we will realize through smart city development, there will be a faster response. So when someone has a problem with something on the street, let's say there's traffic congestion, how is the city going to respond faster to that? I know one of the pervasive challenges in Philadelphia is its litter problem. We have these really wonderful big bellies, but at the same time, they can only hold so much. And I walk to work every day, and I still see that this is a big challenge for us. And so how are we going to respond to things like that in the city of Philadelphia? And ultimately, we want to be a better service provider to our citizens as well. So why is Philadelphia doing this, and why was Philadelphia chosen from the Smart Cities Council? Well, for us, we found that there was a lot that was happening in Philadelphia. For me, I'm relatively young, and I have had the blessing of being able to live just outside the city and really benefit from being in Philadelphia. And just over the course of my own lifetime, I've seen Philadelphia change over the last couple of decades. And in the last 5 years, I mean, look at all the development that's happening and all the people that are moving in, and people are saying Philadelphia is a place rich of opportunity. We have so much history and so much character, and the list goes on, and we have some of the best food, I would say, in Philadelphia. But now I want to get away from just saying we have all this opportunity, and I want to pursue those things. And so in the Kenney administration, we really have prioritized the efficient, effective government, wanting to improve our public safety. And when we talk about public safety, it's not just about police and fire, but it's also talking about the relationship that our public safety officers have with our communities as well. We also want to make sure that we're supporting our economic opportunities. That's talking about both our small, local startup businesses, but also our large corporate partners as well, and everything else in between. And we also want to think about our education system. We know that we have a very big challenge here in wanting to support our K through 12 students and families that are going to be growing their families here. And we want to make sure that we are providing that baseline support. So what does that look like in a smart city? Those are the kind of questions that we're asking. We want to make sure that as we pursue a smart city initiative that we're leveraging a triple bottom line approach. So it's just as much about social equity as much it is about economic development and opportunities, as much it is about our environmental sustainability. We want to make sure that we are being good stewards to our world as well. And in Philadelphia, we have a wonderful community of startups and entrepreneurs, and we were also one of the cities that were studied to see that we had an increasing amount of millennials coming into the city. So there's a lot of opportunity here. We also have some of the most world-class research institutions in Philadelphia. So there's a lot to leverage here, and we want to make sure we're bringing them all along to the table. And I keep talking about collaboration, and you're going to be sick of this word by the end of my presentation, but it's really because that's mainly my job, is to make sure that people are talking to one another and they're collaborating. And all these different groups that we've segmented here, these are some of the folks that we want to bring to the table that we believe are going to help us lead all our larger smart city efforts forward. These are just some examples of projects that are currently happening in the city of Philadelphia. One thing I like to point out is a lot of these projects actually happened before Smart City became a thing. You know, it was before Smart City became this large movement across the country. And the reason why I like to share that is because I love to brag about my colleagues in city government, that they are really thinking about how to do their job better, how to make government work better. And so currently, these are different things that are going on. For example, at Public Health or Air Management Department is, they've already deployed air monitoring devices across the city, but they want to continue building on that and also make sure that the devices that they're using are also going to be environmentally sustainable. So they're looking into solar power for these devices as well. And then we also have in public safety, body cams, gunshot detection, all that good stuff. Currently, all these things are happening in their own departments. And so what we want to see from a smart city effort is to say, how are all these different things that are going on in information and communication technology, how are they going to work together? Where are the opportunities for us to actually collaborate? Is it a platform? Is it a sensor? Is it a video camera? You know, are we going to talk about how we're going to share different types of real estate and infrastructure so we can deploy different types of things? There's a lot of different conversations that need to happen, and it's a very exciting time to be in this space. But again, we want to make sure that we're respectful of each department, the work that they're doing and the mission that they have that they have taken the call to do. And we want to make sure that we're doing that more cohesively moving forward so that as Smart City continues to build its momentum and new technologies emerge, that we're getting ready to be able to continue growing that much larger in Philadelphia. So how are we getting there? We've already initiated a few things. One, I got my job. So I every day, day in and day out, I'm thinking about who needs to be at the table, who else do we need to be talking to, and how are we going to pursue this plan. We just closed an RFP to hire a firm to assist the Office of Innovation and Technology, which is the City of Philadelphia's central IT department, to help us develop a comprehensive roadmap. And what we're hoping to do through this roadmap is a few things. One, we want to make sure that our central IT department is positioned to be a department that is going to support its counterparts. So thinking about how are we going to support our water department to continue building on top of the AMI that they are going to be implementing next year? How are we going to continue being a good partner to our streets department, who's deploying smart lighting and the control management systems that they're going to be putting in, and the network that they're going to be leveraging off of. So these are the things that we want to make sure IT is thinking about, but we also want to bring all these different folks to the table so that this plan is very much complementary to the things that they need to accomplish and desire to do, as much as is what IT needs to do in support of all of this work. From this roadmap, we want to make sure that we're also thinking about the things that we already have. So we talk about leveraging existing assets. It's probably no new concept to all of you, but we want to make sure that we're not leaving anything behind and that we are also being respectful of the kind of work that has happened in the past as well. And then moving forward through the Smart Cities Council on October 12th, we'll be hosting a day-long workshop-style conference for over 150 leaders across Philadelphia. This includes folks from city government, as well as folks from the private sector, our nonprofit organizations, our community and neighborhood associations, advocacy groups, and people who represent academia and education. We really want a diverse range of stakeholders here to really come together, hash out the priority areas of what a smart city plan is. So I know I'm speaking very vaguely, but the fact is that we haven't really created a single vision yet for City of Philadelphia, because we want to make sure that the diverse perspectives are represented in that vision and in selecting our priorities. So I could go through slides and slides of different things that we may pursue, but I think the best thing that I could leave you all with here today is that the City of Philadelphia really wants to be a partner with you all. We want to make sure that we are in support of the really great work that everybody wants to do. One of the exciting things for me is that every conversation I have, everybody wants to make Philadelphia better, everybody wants to stay in Philadelphia, and everybody wants to help Philadelphia. And I think those are all really wonderful things. This is just a quick overview of the Smart Cities Council Readiness Challenge grant, just to give you guys some ideas. And we hope that the outcome of this workshop is to foster partnerships across different sectors, making sure that people who normally wouldn't meet one another in these types of conversations are actually having an opportunity to build a relationship with each other. We also want to receive feedback on the roadmap. So it's in October, and we're hoping that by that time we'll have a few items laid out that people can actually give feedback on and provide solutions to. And also we want to spur ideas and problem-solving strategies to address some of the challenges that are going to come with implementation. The really big thing is funding, on top of all the collaboration, but that's why stakeholder engagement is really at the top of my list right now, so that all the engagement happens prior to us pursuing any one project or any one program.
Thanks, Ellen. Hey, Alexi, perfect. Thank you, Ellen. So we're going to pull a panel up now. Ellen, please. Was that fun sitting? Alexi, go ahead. Alexi, do me a favor. Bring your own chair up. We're going to have 5 people.
Okay.
Strong, like Boru. Tom Greger with Ingenue, Kurt Jacobs with JMA Wireless. High five. And Brian Wachowski with Comcast. I was like, what's that small company? I can't remember. I think they have a future here. And I know they're building. My favorite anecdote of Comcast Tower 1 is the plumbing system. Anybody with the union here? At the risk of death? No? Okay. Yeah, so when they built the Comcast Tower, there was these beautiful, sustainable, waterless restrooms. And just to be safe, they had to put all the plumbing in the building just in case the beautiful, sustainable didn't work. So that wasn't probably the best example.
They're still working pretty well, thankfully. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, we had a lot of faith that it would. But in any case, so we have lots of push and pull in the cities that are impacting, as you said, funding and methodologies, and then job elimination as well as job creation. So we're balancing quite a bit as we go forward. But I'd like to just go across then and ask each of the panelists to maybe talk for a minute about who they are. Alexi, would you say?
Alexei Kiroshkin, NXG. We basically a wireless integrator.
Sure. Hey, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Pete. Brian Wachowski, lead product strategy for a new team at Comcast called MachineQ. We're deploying a new type of IoT network in the power area network. We're deployed here in Philadelphia, Chicago, and now the Bay Area. And a key part of our strategy and the benefit of the technology is enabling new smart cities technology. So we're working closely with a lot of stakeholders in the city, Ellen's team, Drexel, Temple, University of Pennsylvania. We're excited for the technology and kind of solutions this will enable, and look forward to working with the local development community and some of the people in this room to move things forward.
Good morning, Kurt Jacobs. I'm with JMA Wireless. We make infrastructure to connect to wireless, mostly in building underground, in stadium venues where you need densification or coverage. my role within the company and why I'm here is I'm building the ecosystem of not just connecting mobile phones, but all other devices to put together solutions and new markets with the technology. Because it's not going to be just one of us here at the table that's going to make this happen.
Good morning, my name is Tom Greger, and I'm the President General Manager of the Machine Network at Ingenu. Like Brian and what he's doing at MachineQ, Ingenu has developed a new technology that's been purpose-built for machine communications, and we are a low-power, wide-area technology, which is bringing an alternative to traditional cellular communications for machines and Internet of Things solutions. I've been in the wireless industry for over 20 years. I got my start with OmniPoint, a regional GSM carrier that got their start in the Northeast, and that ultimately became T-Mobile's existing footprint today. And I've had some experience working with MVNO organizations of Rayco Wireless, Core Telematics, and have presently been with Ingenu now for 2 years.
Good morning, everyone. I didn't give myself a formal introduction, so I'll give one now. My name is Alan Huang. I am the Program Manager for Innovation Management in the Office of Innovation Technology, and that is the central IT department for the City of Philadelphia. I have a background in nonprofit management and program development, and now I'm doing the Smart Cities work.
Excellent. Excellent. So excellent. Obviously we've got a really strong sample. We've got Ellen with the city. We've got a couple of network guys. We've got OEM, and we got a guy who puts it all together. So I think we've got a good representation. So put up the Ellen slide again. We should talk about some of the buckets, some of the areas where we're having a major impact with smart cities. So Ellen, just to expand for a second, let's just look at transportation, all right? And I probably should do waste first. Look at transportation and the streets department. Expand a bit what it took to kind of accomplish some of these and how that interacts with IT.
So actually, our streets department is, and a lot of these departments have acted relatively independently. I don't know from the project management's perspective, to be quite honest, but we embedded sensors in roads, and it was a pilot effort along Kelly Drive, actually, and to see whether or not we could slow traffic down. And I believe they're still doing the studies on that, and so I don't have the official results of it. But I think what can be taken from here is that, at least from the embedding the sensors and the transitional priority program, which was in partnership actually with SEPTA on the 47 bus line, they have sensors attached to the buses so that as it's approaching a red light, it'll make sure that it's flowing through the traffic on the 47 route more efficiently. So I was not a part of a lot of these conversations because these were things that were happening prior to the Smart City Initiative actually becoming an official program for the City of Philadelphia. These are things that were happening in the last several years. But anytime we have these kinds of projects, especially embedding sensors in the roads, it requires a tremendous amount of coordination because we have to dig out the concrete in the roads and making sure that we're connecting them appropriately as well. So one of the questions that we're going to be asking as we're developing this roadmap is what kind of network is going to support the scalability of these pilot programs. We want to make sure that it's not just on Kelly Drive, that if there is an area through perhaps through our Vision Zero plan, that we know that there's an intersection where there is too much speeding, too many accidents and deaths associated with speeding. We want to make sure that we're tackling those streets, and we want to prioritize those areas as well. And that's where we come in, is from a network perspective, we want to make sure that we're connecting those areas appropriately to have these sensors embedded. So maybe it's getting off the LoRa technology that's coming in and making sure that we're coordinating with our streets department, with IT, with folks over in sustainability, and in our Office of Transportation and Infrastructure Systems, who oversees our policy and transportation. We want to make sure that all those folks are talking together so that these are not happening in isolation. Converting to the smart LED lights, we're still working on this, and I think that one of the challenges that we're facing is the funding and financing of this. And so if having a collaborative model in managing a project like this is going to help further the funding opportunities. That's where we see another role in all of this.
So you helped tee me up here. You said, the big challenge is what type of network and scalability. This pilot, what is it operating? Is it operating on a LoRa right now, or how's that?
I actually don't know that.
Okay.
I can find out.
No, okay, well, that's fair. I mean, there's so much going on, but I'd like Tom, touch on a little bit now how Ingenue and low power, and then I'm going to go to Brian likewise. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, just to add on what Ellen was saying, what these new low power technologies are bringing to cities like Philadelphia, one is infrastructure. So Ingenue is building out a network here that the city of Philadelphia does not need to invest in. We're providing that coverage and footprint for those streetlights to communicate to. So there's a win-win for the city in that we could potentially leverage city assets to co-locate our equipment. In turn, the city benefits by using that network for streetlights as one example. The big thing that low power wire technology is bringing is stability to machines and the Internet of Things. Traditional cellular, from the early days of 2G to 3G, 4G, it's been a constant evolution to be able to support you and I and our smartphones. We need, always on connectivity for our phones. Radio spectrum is limited. So cellular carriers are forced to sunset their technologies to be able to provide these services for you and I and our smartphones. Every time they do an evolution of that technology, it does a disservice to machines. So those sensors that you're putting in the pavement, it costs a lot of money to rip up infrastructure and put sensors there. You need to know that the technology that you're putting in that sensor is going to be there for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. Unfortunately, you're not seeing that with the traditional 2G, 3G approach of having to rip that module out and replace it. It's very easy for you and I to walk into a retail store and trade in our old 3G phone and give me the next great 4G LTE phone, or if 5G is coming, well, I'll take the next 5G smartphone. It's very difficult for that parking sensor to rip itself out of the concrete and walk in and get its replacement module.
So Tom, just touch real quickly on your version of the low power wide area RPMA.
You're stealing my slides from later today, Peter.
I know, just one.
So in terms of the benefits of what the RPMA technology, and that stands for Random Phase Multiple Access. So that's a new technology that Ingenue has created from the ground up, purpose-built for machine communications. So we bring a tremendous amount of coverage with one single installation. So we can achieve 200 square miles of coverage with one co-located Omni antenna. We've built out the Phoenix metro area today. We're covering 1,800 square miles, and we're doing that with 9 sites. So there's just a tremendous amount of coverage that is being brought with very little investment in terms of the amount of infrastructure that's required. The benefit for end users of the technology is that we can bring very competitive, low-cost rates for those sensors to access that network, because it does not take a lot of infrastructure to create a great coverage footprint over the different cities and municipalities that we're going into.
Okay, so that said, I shifted to Brian's slide, which kind of lays out very well where low power fits in the total scheme of the networks. But Brian, why don't you explain kind of Comcast's approach and how you use LoRa?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Pete. And thanks, Tom, too. It's our technologies clearly overlap, but it's important that we get more audience familiar with the long acronym of LPWAN and what it means. So for us, we adopted LoRa technology. It's a global standard supported by a not-for-profit alliance called the LoRa Alliance. And the key for us is we had a team that looked very closely at the technology underpinnings of it, and we think it has a great performance in a wide area network city environment. But for us, it was important that it was an open standard and that it was not proprietary. So the core silicon is owned by a company called Semtech, who's very influential in supporting it. But there are multiple silicon vendors. There's a large ecosystem. There are 35 national carriers that have deployed LoRa, and there are over 500 members. And I would say beyond that as well is, LoRa module today to integrate into a product is roughly $7 on Arrow.com, and that's getting much cheaper. So we think it's accessible to a broad audience. So you just don't have to be a big company to integrate the technology, where you can make it democratized for a startup community to embrace. And If I could give a quick plug, we're doing just that. This weekend, Friday and Saturday, we're hosting a Smart City Hackathon here in Philly with some cooperation from the city, and we're interested to see what the local development community can come up with.
Terrific. So we touched a bit on the low power wide area. And that low power wide area, right, the characteristic is we're not sending video files here, right? We're sending, what average, what do we got?
Yeah, every technology is a little different. For LoRa, the max payload is 240 bytes. So definitely not video, probably in most cases not audio, and definitely not any deep images or high-res images. So for us, it's a great fit for, is a dumpster full, how fast is someone going, is a car passing, and again, as Tom alluded to, it's really around battery efficiency. The fact that you can deploy these sensors and they're only, with even a small lithium-ion battery, they can last up to 10 years depending on how often they're sending data. So if you combine that with the fact that it's operating in unlicensed spectrum, the connectivity cost is very economical for the end user. In countries in Europe and Asia where it's been deployed nationally, on a bit-for-bit basis, it's about 1/10 the cost of competing 2G and 3G technologies.
Okay, so we're all obviously hearing quite a bit about 5G, right? Anybody want to guess by 2020 what percentage of traffic, broadband traffic, is going to be on the 5G networks? Anybody got a guess? So Cisco puts out the VNI. Everybody's probably seen that one. They project in 2020, 2%, less than 2% of total traffic will be carried on 5G. So all those commercials are wonderful, and it's coming, but the 4G is not paid off, and it's doing quite a good job already. So, 5G is in the wings, but there's a lot of practical solutions right now. So I want to ask Alexei, with cellular, what are you designing now to handle both the coverage and the capacity? What are some of the methods?
Well, Peter, you're correct. Yeah, that does. Okay, Peter, you're correct. Right now we're still deploying 4G, and we will be deploying 4G for a while. But along with 4G, we'll be deploying other upcoming technologies as well. And the important thing for us is to understand all that, and then teach our people and the local people in all our markets what is not only to design it but also to deploy it, because ultimately that's where it's going to work. Again, thank you. Yes, we of course in tune with 5G and kind of watching when is it coming and so on. But all this other technologies won't put themselves in just like he doesn't rig himself out of the pavement, he won't get itself into the pavement. So this is where we come, and the other thing we wanted to make sure that we utilize a lot of local knowledge and the local people, and that's where we've been very successful in getting the involvement from the local people, because this is their city, this is where they want they live, and they know better how to deploy systems here. So we only provide the training and sort of a flow down of technology to them so they can deploy it in their city.
Right, so Kurt, you see your big bellies up there. Can you talk a little bit about the network types that you're working on besides IoT, DAS, and how you're working across the different types of networks, and then how it practically plays out, and how you've taken the view of the street furniture, et cetera?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And fortunately, I did my neck exercises this morning, so I can see what you're putting up on the screen behind us. Well, at JMA, we believe that it's not going to be just one type of network. It's going to be a variety. So the machine-to-machine low power is very, very valuable, because now we're able to connect things. But when you play out all the use cases for smart city and providing services and changing the environment for the city, you have to get the human involved. You have to change the human experience. And the human's going to be using a broadband connection because they're already carrying their phones. So providing coverage, whether it's to a maintenance guy going to look at a pump that's alarming because of low power and he needs to use his augmented reality on the Verizon or AT&T network, to fix the phone, or the person in the car that's doing things, getting information on transportation on their smartphone, or when they're in a parking garage trying to do smart parking, they get connectivity. So it's not going to be just one technology. They're all great. We got to figure out how to make them work together to really change the user experience if we really want to have an impact. So it's not just about automating the city for that. But we also see why he puts the big belly up, and actually my colleague Ray took pictures this morning of, and I was out running through the city and saw the big belly. We also have to look at the way things look. And he has some pictures of, we have some poles around the city that have a lot of stuff on them. And then there's a big belly right next to it, which is a great device that compacts. So we're trying to come up with innovative solutions, like working with Big Belly to build a telecommunications cabinet to house all this technology, whether it's low power or cellular, to increase the densification. So we can have a nice Philadelphia light pole and a practical use thing, and we can unclutter things. So concealment's part of this creativity that we have to come with, and addressing the different stakeholders, not only what you want to do, but we can't do it in an ugly way or a way that the user is can't have access to the technology and so forth.
I think you make such a great point. It's the users that we really need to be thinking about, and we really want to put them at the center of this. I gave a quick anecdote about the litter problem that's in Philadelphia, and that's not because we don't have enough waste bins or we're not picking them up enough necessarily. I think there's things around that we could do, but I think at the end of the day, there are folks who just there's a culture here that we really need to change, and also we really want to include them in this conversation so that we can keep our streets cleaner and keep our environment cleaner. So I love that we're thinking about really putting the users at the center, because I think all of this, we want to make sure that the users are benefiting, and it's not things that maybe it's going to happen in the background. For example, the traffic sensors in the street, like, people are not necessarily going to see that, especially when they're driving. Hope they're not looking at the ground when they're driving. That wouldn't be a good thing. But we want to make sure that folks are involved and they know and are aware of what's happening, so that they know exactly what the impact is going to be, and also put a little bit of onus on our citizens as well. We want them to take responsibility here.
That's what my earlier point was, where if you involve the local people in deploying these technologies, that most likely they would like to upkeep it. And so instead of parachuting people from somewhere else and then let's make it happen, no, let's train the local people to use it, because they, number one, know the best how to access the streets and install it and so on, but also they will have a sense of ownership and say, no, don't bother that, let's keep using it. And again, if they knew about this technology, then they will be maintaining the technology and so on.
So Ellen, is there a vision for kind of a smart shared infrastructure? We're very early stage. How does this city leverage its network and then try to figure out how to maybe public-private cooperation as well as interdepartmental?
This is going to be a primary piece of our roadmap, and so I think right now we are relying and talking to other folks when we know who manages the light poles. It's streets. We know that OIT is managing all the franchise agreements, and we do a lot of the connectivity for the city. I think that now the conversation needs to be, okay, streets, what is it exactly that you need support in, and how is OIT gonna make sure that we're not a barrier to you, but more of a partner with you on this? And I think those are the kind of conversations that didn't always take place in a strategic way. They kind of happen ad hoc or just on an as-needed basis, and now we're really putting together a strategy together to make sure that those larger conversations are happening.
I had the good fortune to do the first Smart City Readiness program Tuesday with Orlando, and so they had roughly 200 people there. It was split public and private, and it really, what I saw was amazing, because I actually bopped around a few rooms and saw the dialogue, and there's the afternoon's breakout sessions and on topics, and it was phenomenal to listen to how separate everybody really was. And you know, they were trying, they had a lot of incentives, but still each department really had its own view. They smiled a lot and wanted to cooperate, but they pretty much, I got the sense, were saying, well, whatever, you know, good, that's all nice, I'll play nice, but I'm going to do what I'm going to do. You know, because it doesn't stop, the public safety issues, the waste, all of this. So, you know, I think the session is going to be very productive for you just to kind of force people to look eye to eye, and then they write everything down, so you sort of semi-commit there. But Brian, how does Comcast view, you know, working with the city and a public-private partnership? Obviously, revenue is important and profitability, but also being good citizens of the city. I think you have an interest as a stakeholder in just the city being strong.
No, absolutely. I think at Comcast, beyond our Machine Q venture, we have a huge heritage of working with cities through our fiber networks, our coax network for broadband connectivity. Last year, we renegotiated the local franchise agreement with the city, and as part of that, we announced an iNet where we're connecting many city facilities to our fiber network. So at Machine Q, we're trying to build on that heritage. The networks we're deploying are multi-tenant, and they're designed to connect city resources, public enterprises, academia, you know, anybody who's interested in connecting their device. So I think an interesting phenomenon in the IoT space is all these millions and millions of devices coming online. So many of them are going to be either owned by the city or managed by them. And Philly's doing a great job with this, I think, is what's the data strategy there? How do you make that publicly available? How do you make that available for third parties to innovate and improve public services? So I think that's going to be interesting how that evolves over the next few years.
Okay, so there's a lot of components that go into SMART, right? And this is a JMA slide, so I'm going to start with you, Kurt. By the way, Kurt is are you retired now, or are you in the reserves?
November 1st.
November 1st, we'll be helping to support Kurt's. But Kurt was a commander in Bahrain of one of our air forces, did some wonderful things for our country. So thanks for that, Kurt. But back to the topic. Talk a little bit about how this complex ecosystem comes together and how a company like JMA that manufactures the equipment is going further to try to pull together the entire ecosystem.
Yeah, we do a lot with stadiums and cities and in building. And the methodology we kind of take them through is start with the connectivity first, which again may be of multiple types. That's the foundation, because once you got connectivity, because we know we're not going to control the city on what they're going to deploy and how things are going to evolve. I don't think we have that crystal ball yet. But that will happen, and the best ideas come from the end users involving the locals. But then how do you collect that information, aggregate it together, analyze it, and then get it back to the users to get the human back in the loop, whether it's someone monitoring a dashboard or, you know, triggering alarms or making things collaborative. I'll overuse that word for you with folks. But the ecosystem is not just one technology. There's the networking piece, but then the data, how it's collected, and the back-end services of, I'm sure you probably got 16 different databases, well, probably hundreds of databases that have to be fused together. Where to use the cloud for analytics. To do that, how do you present it back to people, either internally or externally? And that whole process, that ecosystem. And in the state of the industry, each one of these on the right-hand side, we're pretty mature. There's a lot of choice that you need to do within it. The problem is the seams between these different parts of the ecosystem. And that's what we have to discuss and work on as an industry to work out. And the cities are going to help us figure that out.
Okay, so again, as you said, the collaboration is crucial, right? Ellen, what do you have, about 50 people on your staff now?
Can you help? Anyone want to volunteer?
I mean, so, you know, Ellen is charged with leading the effort, and you've got all these different hard-nosed departments out there, but you're at the point where you've got some connected. They're putting the sensors out there. They're trying to ad hoc deal with their data. They may be hiring a third party. But is there a vision to try and create a shared platform where the data will come in and maybe through APIs, et cetera?
So one of the more recent conversations that I've had with our primary data folks is, where does it make the most sense to share data across departments? Yesterday I was just talking to our chief GIS officer. So one thing to know is OIT actually houses a lot of data for the different departments, but we don't own any of it. So that creates like an interesting dynamic too, because we still need to ask permission to access certain types of data. And right now, people are really just doing it in goodwill. You know, if you need access to certain types of data, they put in a MOU or just have a meeting to really hash out what kind of data they want, how they can use it, and all those different things. So I think that the important thing moving forward is, one, to identify where does it make the most sense to share platforms and the data. Who's going to manage that once it becomes to have these like small, in my head I have these like small hubs of centralization. Who's going to manage all of that? And that's a governance question that we need to work out as government. And then 3 is to really think about what are the data sharing models that we're going to have both internally, but then also what are the policies that we'll be able to produce publicly as well. We do have a really wonderful team working on the open data, but we want to make sure that we're supporting them appropriately as well, and that we are also thinking about how can we formalize some of these processes so that the data sharing can flow a lot more easily moving forward.
Brian, does Comcast have a vision besides just being the network connectivity? Do you have the platform to start to provide analytics and all that data? How are you viewing the whole ecosystem?
Yeah, thanks, Pete. I think for us now, we've been focused on the connectivity side of things and enabling other solution providers, but I think us and every other carrier in the LPWAN space is trying to diversify beyond connectivity, but it's kind of the first inning. I think we're very focused on what does that platform evolve to and what analytics and other services we offer over time. I think one interesting anecdote from another global carrier, I won't say who it is that they saw connectivity for machine-to-machine LPWAN going to 0 over the next few years, and that carriers would be able to monetize that through shared access to anonymized data. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but it's an interesting viewpoint. So again, I think for us now, it's really focused on enabling connectivity, providing that data to the end user, whether it's an enterprise or the city, and I think we'll see that market evolve very quickly from what other services carriers offer on top of that.
So Alexi, how about location-based on the cellular networks now? Are you being asked more and more to enable location-based, and they're trying to link it to more and more services, or how does location start to play into these networks?
Well, we're definitely kind of coming down from the towers to closer to the user. So we, instead of 1,000 of towers around, we now dealing with the tens of thousands of small cells, and therefore we deploying a different workforce, educating a different workforce, and deploying the wireless technologies on the poles, somewhere near the streets, on the sides of the buildings, and definitely that is our job is now take this less expensive small devices and deploy them less expensively. So that's it's a challenge because everybody's used to think big. Well, let's put everything on the tower. It's a big thing. It has to deploy with machines and everything. Now you have to now process, instead of 2 or 3 sites a day, you got to process 25 poles a day. So it's a different dynamics, and again, the local knowledge and really helps a lot in getting into to the users, because all of that gets in closer to the users.
So Alexi's referencing, kind of the growth of the small cell on the cellular level. That's starting to be more and more requests, but that's got to be mounted on other than a tower. What type of street furniture? What are you being asked to start to mount these devices on?
Well, most of you guys could see them on the street, and hopefully lots of people don't notice. But in reality, yes, it's going on the poles, and most of the people won't notice that because there's so much clutter on that already.
So any kind of concealment or any kind of a small device is going to be slapped against the pole or built within the pole. There's a lot of new poles being developed to actually conceal everything, and they look beautiful and so on. Cost a lot of money. So there's still a lot of clutter approaches. Unfortunately, increase the clutter just to mount the units on a string mount, right, on the cables that you see there. So yeah, that's probably more ugly approach, but it's more realistic in the deployment scale that's happening right now.
So Ellen, how does the city control the aesthetics? A company's going to deploy small cells, and how do you ensure that the aesthetics of the city are maintained?
I think the more appropriate question at this point is how are we going to do that moving forward? It's certainly, my goodness, I love our streets department so much because they are the ones who are getting inundated with requests to get access to these poles. And everybody wants to pilot, and it all goes on these poles. And so thinking about sharing infrastructure, I mean, our poles is going to be a really big question, and we also want to find alternatives. We want to make sure that it's not just the poles that we're looking at. And so doing an assessment of our assets and what's actually going to be decluttering our poles and or streamlining the types of pilots that we pursue. We want to make sure that the collaboration, the conversations we're having collaboratively are also addressing that so that people are not all owning one video camera for one department for one need. We want to see how can we actually share the information that's flowing, and hopefully that'll declutter some of the real estate on these poles. But then also thinking about assets like our big bellies. Is that another place, and what are the appropriate solutions that we want to deploy on something like that or off of our municipal buildings? Those are all questions that are still have yet to be answered, but certainly we have folks who are thinking exactly about what is this going to look like in the future.
Okay, so it's still a little bit of a free-for-all out there?
No, it's not a free-for-all, but I think when it comes to aesthetics, we haven't had a concrete conversation about what that looks like, how to manage that.
Okay. Tom, talk a little bit about how your network is constructed and how many access points and how you provide the bandwidth.
Yeah, so today we're phase one of our network build is more of a high coverage approach. So rather than being down close to street level, we're the opposite. So we want to be as high on a tower as possible. So a broadcast tower, a couple 100 feet up in terms of a radiation center for us to put our equipment is exactly where we want to be. So from that site, depending on topography and terrain and foliage and other things, we could achieve up to a 200 square mile radius of coverage with one location. Or what we're seeing of the 300 plus sites that we've deployed throughout the US, we're averaging a little over 100 square miles in all the markets that we've been deployed in to date. So since we don't need a lot of infrastructure, we're not providing any clutter to a city or anything like that. So we're either high up on an existing tower that's there, or we look for a rooftop where we can put our antenna on that existing rooftop. Since we do create such a broad coverage ring with one site, we can be very flexible. So if there's a tower that is already overloaded or failed a structural, that's okay. We can just look to a different tower aggregator and look for different infrastructure and be very flexible when we do our network plans and do our build outs.
Right, I want to ask you, I put your very attractive machine IoT network picture. Please talk a little bit about your structure and how LoRa's going to work.
And on our slide here, we're very similar to the Ingenue and Tom's team on number one. At the Comcast Center right behind us, we have antenna on the 56th floor facing out, and we can get 30 miles line of sight from there. So we get very broad coverage as well. The key differentiator for us, though, number two, is we have thousands and thousands of miles of cable strand throughout the country, and more in most locations we don't have pole rights, but we can deploy small gateways on those cable strand. Roughly a shoebox size device that gets a couple miles in each direction. So we'll be heavily leveraging that density to get deep indoors very economically. So it's very hard to hit a water meter 6 feet under grade in a basement from a cell tower, but it's much easier if you're deploying a gateway on a cable strand 18 feet up. And that's phase 2. And in phase 3, we have 24 million internet subscribers across the country. We're looking at ways to potentially leverage that footprint to deploy deep indoors. We also have access and service in millions of apartments, and maybe with some help from JMA, we're looking at how we can deploy wireless networks that are very dense to get through a high-rise, which is very hard to do with Wi-Fi or BLE, considering the density of concrete or rebar, and get that throughout a tall high-rise.
Okay, so you hit on a central issue that we haven't spent much time. We have a panel in the afternoon that's going to really focus on the buildings particularly. I'm excited to see Ezra Hug in the back with his headphones on, so you can't hear me making fun of him right now. But in any case, so we're going to focus on the buildings. Talk a little bit about. Let's just touch on Wi-Fi real quick. Alexei, are you getting requests now to do Wi-Fi? Are the carriers coming to you for that as well as the DAS and the towers?
Well, the Wi-Fi is sort of a natural addition to anything that we do, and normally we've been asked to deploy Wi-Fi with cellular networks within the buildings. Now, outside the buildings, there are also solutions where pair DAS technology, cellular technologies with Wi-Fi. So if we're talking about anywhere within the city limits, like anywhere we have an indoor system that it has to have Wi-Fi, airports Wi-Fi, of course the arenas, and then when you go out to outside of the buildings, the college campuses, of course, want to deploy both. And they normally already deployed Wi-Fi, but they wanted to bolster that through now having cellular and Wi-Fi carrying the loads together.
I'll since Kurt is beckoning and he's still a commander. Go ahead.
I don't make you salute me yet. Wi-Fi is certainly common, but one of the things is we have to consider things are becoming more mobile. So cellular, so Wi-Fi is still static, although there's technology evolving that's doing that. So that's important. It's not going to be one or the other. It's going to be both as they're connected to it, and that user experience so it's seamless. And there's going to be more of a shared economy and applications and how the user will interact. So as they go in building, out of building, and move around. So that's an important aspect to the Wi-Fi, I think, as well.
So Philadelphia has a rich history with Wi-Fi, and I was fortunate enough to say no back when I controlled the fiber optic network here, and Earthlink bit that bullet. But it's been almost 10 years now. What does Philadelphia think of Wi-Fi? Are there strong initiatives, and is a citywide Wi-Fi, digital inclusion, and that sort of thing important in the whole smart city effort?
Is it important? Absolutely. Digital inclusion is one of the central parts of what we're thinking about as what is Philadelphia as a smart city. We want to make sure that we're bringing our neighborhoods, folks who are underserved, low income, low access, to make sure that we're going to have great impact with them. Brian mentioned that we're working on something with Drexel and Temple, and our key strategy is to actually activate those types of neighborhoods with LoRa technology and all that great stuff. But aside from Wireless Philadelphia, which we know had a lot of challenges, there was a lot of learning that came out of that, right? So that was an effort that we tried to do, and Philadelphia really wanted to pioneer ubiquitous Wi-Fi in the US, and perhaps it was too soon, too quick, but what we learned from that is really needing to have solid partnership moving forward. And in addition to that is really understanding the community's needs at the appropriate time as well. So since then, we've been able to create a Key Spot program, which are over 50 public computing centers that are strategically located in low access neighborhoods. and we provide free Wi-Fi and computer access to these communities, and we also provide training. There's a big workforce development component to it, but we also support young kids who need a place to do their homework after school. It's a safe space. A lot of them are located in our parks and recreation facilities, and we also have quite a robust network of community-based organizations that are also housing our key spots. And we're hoping to be able to expand the offerings of our key spots and be able to continue building around them, be able to provide better Wi-Fi access. And also Comcast has the Internet Essentials program, which provides an in-home adoption program both for seniors as well as families with school-age children. We want to make sure we're supporting all those different things that are going on.
That program is $10 a month for a family, is that what that is?
Yeah, any low-income families, anyone who has children on school lunch qualify, and it is currently $10. We also provide digital training on how to access the web, how to use computers, and also provide cost-effective computers to those families as well. I think sub $100 for a laptop.
So, you know, first movers always take the bullets, right? I mean, there's no question the first one through the door. So I think Philadelphia did spur quite a lot of activity around the country and the world. I remember the tours that were coming through back then. It was amazing. Yeah, I wouldn't be the travel agent booking them. But in any case, you know, you've got the digital inclusion. You just hit on a couple of the key points, though, that really were a problem was the computer. You know, I had the pleasure of teaching over at the Community College of Philadelphia and then firsthand asking my students what they were seeing in some of their neighborhoods. And that was one of the biggest issues was, yeah, okay, I have a connection, but I don't have a computer. Or I don't have a computer that I'm afraid might be stolen, right? So you had issues that were way beyond the technologists. So, you know, kudos to, I made a little joke, but I think Philadelphia has really led the way. So it's encouraging to see that in these 10 years, the public-private cooperations achieve that, and you've drilled down and solved a number of the issues. So I put up a pretty busy chart here, but it's one that we use a lot to kind of zero in on what the smart city is trying to achieve. So we talked a little bit, we didn't talk a lot about the greening element, right, the smart environment. Ellen, how do we look at technology enabling the greening, if you would, of the city? Orlando, for example, did a very formal program with all their buildings, and they studied some 800 buildings around the city and came up with grades for them, and now we're trying to move them more and more to green with IoT and other technologies.
Sure. I think I saw my colleague from Energy in the back room, and I think he's speaking at some point today. So I'm gonna maybe save a little bit from the green buildings, but and let him talk on that because he's the expert there and he's my go-to for all that information. But we do have the Philadelphia Green Works vision plan that we revamped this year, and so a part of the roadmap is really feeding in all that information and work that was previously done into our Smart City roadmap. So sustainability is absolutely a priority and a key part of what we're trying to do. Our water department is doing some really exciting and innovative work in embedding sensor technology and monitoring their green stormwater infrastructure program. We have who I like to call Matt Fritsch. He, our civic hacker of sorts. He is working with Arduino and Drexel University students and professors to monitor some patches of green infrastructure that they're embedding in West Philadelphia, and they're hoping to continue expanding that. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity to actually bring in green infrastructure development and smart cities together. And my background, I actually studied urban planning, and one of the things that I'm seeing is that a lot of what came out of the sustainability movement and wanting to bring in sustainable infrastructure, then there was that open data, and I feel like Smart City has actually been a big response to the outcomes and the challenges that people have faced from those two large movements. Even just in open data, I know that, and I'm digressing a little bit, but just to kind of paint this big picture of how Smart City is really tying together all these different pieces and larger movements together, and how we're going to move forward together from a technology solution perspective.
Okay, well,
just on the green, and I think you have to measure it first in order to change it and affect changes the behavior of users and transforms. So really, it's getting those right sensors and monitoring to know that you actually are doing green and getting there. It's just not saying I have a green building. So we see that as important too, whether we're using low power wide area or CAT-M, narrowband IoT, all the way up to mobile. You know, to get back to users, because we also have to change behaviors and attitudes of people, and that requires communication back to them to achieve. And that's what we're hearing from some of the other cities to achieve the green initiatives.
I put up your very nice slide, but very busy. But yeah, so we talked about, you know, various methods from cellular to RPMA, to LoRa, the machine, different technologies. We really didn't touch on distributed antenna systems, which is Alexi's an expert at bringing those cellular networks closer to the users. But that said, I think, you know, we're coming to that time when we're going to end this panel. Part of the shtick here of the social think tank is that we do share and we interact. So I'm sure there's a few questions out there, or are we still tired? Questions for the panel? I know at least one of you have been dying to talk to Ellen. Yeah, Mr. Reeves with the red hat in the back, sir. Oh, hey.
Was your question about how are we going to be supporting education in the school district?
Exactly, yes.
Okay. So we view the school district as a key stakeholder, and that is a conversation that we are going to be pursuing moving forward. I'm still working quite heavily internally right now to make sure that folks from inside government are banding together appropriately. As we go out into the communities, we want to make sure that we're working off a cohesive vision together. And I mentioned the Key Spot program. We want to see how can we support education. The school district is tricky in that, you know, the local government doesn't control the school district. A lot of that is from the state level, and so making sure that we're bridging those gaps and making sure that we're accounting for them is going to be appropriate. We have the Mayor's Office of Education. Our mayor's very committed to pre-K, and how are we going to tie all these larger programs and initiatives together? Hopefully Smart City can have some impact on that, but I think that, again, we keep talking about the people and the users and the community, and I think there's much larger challenges that I don't know if Smart City is going to be the ultimate solution, and it's going to address all those big things. But, you know, we do have deep set problems in our education system, and certainly we'll want to make sure that the outcomes for our young people and for the people who work in our schools are going to be able to benefit from the things that Smart Cities could bring to their neighborhoods.
Great, thank you. One quick follow-up question just about those key spots. How do we find out where those key spots are here in the city, and how do we find out where they are in the city?
You can go online, and we actually have a Key Spot finder. And if you just Google the Key Spot program, there on the front page, on the homepage, it's there's a map that you can actually look up. You can type in address, zip code, and you can find the one closest to you.
Okay, any other questions as I walk all the way to the front? I knew it was going to be in the back. Yes? Oh, wow. You pay her to raise her hand and then...
Hi, Brett Taylor from Voice for Impact. Has there been any plans or interaction with FirstNet initiative with respect to integrating into the city of Philadelphia?
Sorry. Could you repeat that again?
Is there any plans to look at the FirstNet initiative with respect to integrating into the city of Philadelphia?
Not at the moment.
We did a Safe Smart Building session in the city of Tampa, and we were blessed with some really smart people in uniforms from the public safety community. And we had a great session. We talked about in-building public safety and all that good stuff. And towards the end, we brought up FirstNet, and the gentleman in the uniforms, I was looking towards my dad's guys and some of that, and the gentleman in the uniforms, what's FirstNet? Okay? So who knows what FirstNet is in the room? Okay, so we have a lot of network professionals and folks, but you know, the reality is FirstNet is going to be billions and billions, and AT&T, congratulations on that award, and it should have a major impact, but the rollout is slow. You know, and I don't think everywhere in the cities it's really touched them as close as maybe it should. There may be a person, but there's the tremendous promise there.
Sorry, there's a lot in my head right now. I've been juggling a lot of things. We are aware of this program and the rollout of it, and exactly what you said. I think that it's a little too soon, and actually we haven't been contacted directly to talk about it, but certainly it's on our radar. OIT also manages all the 911 lines, and we work directly with all the public safety departments in the city of Philadelphia. Charlie Brennan, our CIO, is also a former cop, so public safety is really near and dear to his heart as well. And so absolutely anytime there's going to be something in relation to network providing or public safety, that'll come through us.
I think one other thing on FirstNet, it's, and I'm probably stealing some AT&T thunder here, but it's not just about connectivity. They also have a lot of initiatives on the applications that will be involved, how the data, location, it's much broader than just providing, I mean, we provide those public bands in our products and solutions with our carrier partners, but it's interesting that they're taking a much broader view of not just providing access for that program. But it's going to evolve over time, and everybody's just learning about it now.
And public safety is certainly a critical element of the smart city. I just put this up for reference. Smart Cities Council is traveling the world and working with all different cities and countries, and they really throw kudos, and they said the smartest city on earth is Dubai. Okay, and as you can see, the policewoman is dressed a little differently than our policewomen. But they have cameras and sensors and just an amazing amount of technology that goes into protecting their city. So I think we're going to see more and more of that, and I think FirstNet would probably be one of the key drivers, but probably more of 2018 in reality in the field. Any last question? Sir?
What is the city doing to see that some of the most difficult things for us? Some of those difficult things is permitting and enabling us to be able to put up our sites. What is the city doing to help expedite that process? So many towns and jurisdictions are putting moratoriums in place, changing bylaws and ordinances. What is the city doing to help the carriers, build these cell sites out?
I think the policy question and the legal procedures that we're going to need to take are conversations that we need to have. I think we're going to need to really thinking about what it is exactly we want to do and making sure that we're connecting with our private sector industry stakeholders to make sure we understand exactly what we need to enable and what we need to expedite. But certainly, I think this year is a really critical year for Philadelphia so that we can talk about these things and making sure that we're putting those kind of procedural policies in place so that we can continue moving forward and making sure that we're not stifling implementation.
And AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint are here. Sorry about that. Okay, well that's, in the interest of time, we're going to have to cut, but I'm just going to go across real quick. And final thoughts, Alexi?
Well, it's been a great panel. Thank you. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, the audience, for good questions. And appreciate, we'll see each other somewhere else in other Smart City events. And thank you.
Just say as a Philadelphia resident of the city that, I think totally align with OIT and Ellen's vision to make Philadelphia smarter. I think for this room, there's so many different contributors to that. And I think this is a great event for us to start working together more closely towards that goal.
Just in general, really excited working with cities around the country and the world, really, because the cities are pushing the envelope on implementing some of these technologies, and they're also willing to talk about it with the public, which I think is really important for all of us to get the feedback.
Yeah, I would just add that there's no cookie cutter approach to every city. Every city has their own unique needs and cultures and citizens. And it's just what Ellen said about collaboration is key, and collaborating with different technologies to be able to solve the different needs of their citizens in each city.
Hopefully you guys aren't sick of hearing my voice this morning. But I guess my big message is that I would hope that you could all see yourselves as collaborators, and as a city of Philadelphia, we know that we have a large responsibility to take on some leadership, and we're really excited about it, but it's a lot, and so we're just hoping that we can garner as much support as we can from many aspects that are necessary to really realize a smart city vision for our city. So just thank you so much for listening, and I hope that in the future that you will all come and be a part of this ride that we are all on together.
Well, thank you. Let's get a round of applause for Kathy. It's going to take about 2 to 5 minutes here. We're going to swap out the computers. So we've got an exciting video apparently. So we're going to add that. But don't disappear for 5 minutes.
So thanks, Pete. Yes, I am with CK Dexter. We generally consult, do program management around at the intersection of utilities and telecom. Sometimes that's smart grid, sometimes that's smart meters, and sometimes I get a call from Pete saying, hey, we're going to be having an event around the Smart City Initiative in Philadelphia. And I got excited about that and was thinking back over the last year and looking for some inspirations, and it dawned on me that there were several big events in Philadelphia last year that kind of helped to frame up and give some focus to what is Smart City, what can it be, and how do we put a shovel in the ground. And landed on the experience, some of the experience coming away from the Democratic National Convention and a street lighting project that I think I framed up around that. So with no further ado on my part, I'd like to introduce Glenn Pritchard with PICO.
Hi, good morning. I'm Glenn Pritchard. I'm the manager of our Advanced Grid Operations and Technology Group. Essentially, that's a smart grid engineering group. I have a small team of engineers, and we both are the subject matter experts for PICO's Smart Grid Initiative, and then we also manage and develop new opportunities for that grid, much like what we're going to talk about here in a moment about smart streetlights.
Morning, everybody. My name is Adam McGallico. I serve as the energy manager for the City of Philadelphia in the Office of Sustainability. Our office manages all of energy procurement, building operations, and energy efficiency projects throughout the city, as well as utility bill management. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about the kind of interest for the city in LED street lighting, as well as kind of the interplay into smart cities and some of the other work that we're doing in that space.
It is. Is this live? Okay, good. So I'm Charlie Nobles, and yes, this is my real voice. Many of you probably don't understand what a word I'm saying, but there'll be translation services afterwards from Southern English into English. So this is, English is a second language person. I'm from North Carolina, no surprise. I'm the Director of Marketing for Census. We are the provider of the long-range network that's being used and enjoyed by PICO on behalf of the greater Philadelphia area, and we'll be chatting a bit about how we are repurposing, work with PICO, that network, which is smart grid based, for other services that Ellen mentioned that the city can enjoy. Thanks. If you don't know what I'm saying, just see me later and I'll talk slower and maybe you'll catch it. Or Bob, could you give translation services? Good, thanks.
All right, well, I'm going to lead off the session here. I think think everyone's fairly familiar with Pico and Exelon, but just wanted to call a couple of statistics off this slide. So Exelon in general, we're a conglomeration of both electric utilities, gas utilities, and then generating. From an electric utility standpoint, we have 10 million customers, one of the largest, if not the largest, in the United States at this point in time. Right now, we have 7.4 million of those customers with smart meters. So we're moving lots of data already, and that really becomes a precursor, a first step in the smart cities environment itself. For Pico in particular, this is a map of southeastern Pennsylvania, Center City, Philadelphia, here right along the river where we are today. We've overlaid a network to support that communication. In particular, Pico is moving data from 2.3 million endpoints. We have about 1.7 million electric meters, over 500,000 gas meters, and now we're adding in different devices that help manage the electric grid itself. We have pole-top switches that help speed the restoration of power when outages or damage occurs. We have a number of different telemetry units. And now we're even getting more adventurous, looking into things like smart streetlights. And that's what we're here to talk to today. I'd actually like to start the presentation now with a short video that we've prepared.
Street lighting is an essential public service, providing a safe environment for commuters and pedestrians. But these essential devices are getting smarter and doing more than ever in today's smart cities. Connected to smart grid technology, which allows for the collection and two-way flow of information, smart streetlights are becoming increasingly essential tools for city and regional operations. At Pico, we've partnered with the City of Philadelphia, installing about 100 new smart, energy-efficient LED streetlights along Independence Mall in Center City. The smart streetlights utilize LED technology, providing dimming and blinking capability, and use Pico's advanced communications network to allow programmable and remotely controlled use of the lighting system. Combined with LEDs, smart streetlights can use about 30% less energy than traditional streetlights, can be brightened or flash for greater safety, or in support of local first responders during emergency situations. These and other smart energy enhancements are making us safer and providing us new choices and options for how we use energy. Innovative technologies like smart streetlights are part of our ongoing effort to evaluate new technologies, products, and services that will help advance our region's energy future.
So that is a quick overview of Pico's effort. To shed some more light, more detail on that, I have a few slides. One, what you saw there was a demonstration of Census's Vantage Point street lighting system. Even from the presentation prior to this, we talked about some of the components and some of the challenges of any of these smart city Internet of Things type of technologies. What we really see, there's three key components. One is the endpoint, the device itself. So in this case, smart streetlight communication modules. These are replacement devices for the photocells, typically in a streetlight. But then we also have some form of communication network. In this case, Pico has put a FlexNet network. It's a proprietary network, but it will support many, many different types of endpoints and communications and purposes. And then they have a control system called the Vantage Point system that gets integrated into the ecosystem of the company that's using it. So the system itself, what is more unique about this system is it doesn't only support LEDs or the new style lights. It will actually also support legacy lights. So some of the features you can get from that is you can monitor the energy usage for each light individually. That has some promise just as we become more and more efficient, so we know what's working and what's not. That energy monitoring also leads to being able to tell what lights are burning, what lights are not burning, or illuminated in this case. That will actually speed the operations and maintenance of the lights themselves. We can also, as you saw in the video, dim, brighten, and even flash their lights. So there's a lot of interesting use cases that are being put out for that, especially with public safety, whether you might flash a light outside of a premise or dwelling that has an emergency to help the first responders get to it, but also maybe even on campuses. I know Charlie's going to talk more about smart campuses and how those features can be utilized. And that's not what if, that's today. These features are available now in many cases. So when Pico learned about this option for our smart grid, we did want to learn more about this. We wanted to demonstrate this. We ultimately wanted to build business cases so we can understand what the offering to our partners across the greater Philadelphia area might be. We ultimately decided on 2 different demonstrations. The first and most visible is the one that was mentioned for the Democratic National Convention last summer. That's what you saw in the video, but I do have some more details about that. We do have a second demonstration in our in Berwyn, which is near the King of Prussia Mall. We have a large complex that a lot of our operations move in and out of. And so we converted all the lights there to LED lights for the efficiency, for the improvement, but we also decided to make those smart LED lights as well. And you can see total just around 150 lights that we're demonstrating right now. So that's a rather small count, but it's setting the stage to scale as we determine the need is there. For an independent mall, we really kind of wanted to show that off, especially to the conventioners that were in town. So in this case, it wasn't just about new lights, brighter light, new environment. We wanted to show off the capabilities. So we actually created a bit of an animation, kind of like a grandfather clock, that functioned on the hour in the early evening hours. In this case, half the lights would dim, half the lights would brighten, and they'd oscillate back and forth. And then all the lights would be increased in their brightness. And at the same time, the Liberty Bell chime would be echoing in the background. So when it ran, it was kind of neat, a nice way to show off the city. And I have a short animation of that here that you can see. We didn't have a video, but you can see how the alternating lights increase in intensity and then decrease. They hand back and forth. And it was intended to have an indication for the people walking by, hey, something's different here. What's going on? You can see at the end they were fully bright, and that's when the Liberty Bell would be chiming. So it was a little thing that we could add to the convention itself. Now during this demo, we did get one really nice benefit, that there was a cable fault. That cable fault took out a half dozen lights. Now that can happen, okay, but these lights were right in front of Independence Hall. And so we were able to find that immediately when that happened, and dispatch and work with Adam in the city to get those lights back on as quick as possible, so we didn't have to wait for people to call in. That's something we do with the electric system today, where all the electric meters tell us when the power goes out, when power comes back, and we can speed our dispatch operations. It's great being able to extend that to other services like street lighting. There are a number of different alarms we can get on that, so not only what lights aren't operating, what lights aren't illuminated, but also you can look at the energy usage. So if there's a change in that energy usage itself, that would also be an indication of potentially a problem with that light. So it is about getting smarter on how your system is operating overall. It's just a glimpse of one of the screens. One of the other features, there are quite a number of analytic capabilities embedded within the system itself. So you really get a really good oversight and a view intimately how the system itself is operating. You can set baselines, you can set changes. You can actually program when the lights come on, when they come off. So typically you might do that with sunrise and sunset, but one of the questions becomes, do you have to do it absolutely at sunrise or sunset, or do you want to delay it a little bit as the darkness or sunlight starts setting in and changing state? So you want to light the area when it's needed in the most appropriate fashion. And with a system like this, you can do that. One of the other experiments that we ran with this system, and it's kind of novel here, and in many ways I guess you could say it makes sense, but we looked at the lights. We first set them all at 100% full brightness. Then we actually progressively dimmed the lights over a period of time and observed the energy usage. And when we dropped the setting, first we dropped it to 75% intensity and then down to 50% intensity. And you can see the corresponding energy usage drop. Now, actually when you're out in the street, In most cases, you can't notice the difference in the illumination of this. Some of that has to do with the LED lighting, the color, the frequency that is. But there's many techniques here, and this actually creates another use case that if you start with a light set at 75%, and as the light ages, it does fall off in its brightness. Since you start at 75%, you can slowly increase that over its lifetime and maintain a constant brightness. So that gives another feature for the lighting itself that might not be immediately recognized. So with this short pilot, we had a number of successes where we were able to really truly demonstrate how the system worked, how it gets installed, how we manage it. But we were able to measure the usage reductions and correlate that into environmental benefit. We automated the lighting controls. It simply is logging in and changing those settings. We still do see a number of opportunities, learn how to better integrate this into the business, how to leverage this function and other functions with this technology. We're really looking forward in how can we develop partnerships and working with the city and other groups to really deploy this type of technology. Of course, there are always challenges. One of the things I haven't heard this morning particularly is the security related with this. And any type of smart grid type of network or Internet of Things, security must be one of the top evaluation criteria for that. Now, since we have the electric meters, the gas meters, and even mission critical functions on this, PECO is obligated to have the utmost security, and Census has helped enable that. And we are comfortable, and we think we've presented a good product. Now, that doesn't mean we are resting on our laurels. We are constantly evaluating that, revisiting the security and making sure it is and remains best in class. However, the system too is interoperable, and we can add any number of different devices. So as we talk about what does a smart city look like, we're already at a point we can offer electric, gas, water, street lighting, and then taking even further into the automation, distribution automation, or management of those utility systems, so gas systems, gas SCADA, and even into the water side, so water treatment and other facilities. PECO is anticipating and looks forward to a very bright future here, and no pun intended. But at this point, I'd like to hand off to Adam to give some further insight.
Thank you. So we heard a little bit about what street lighting can do. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why we care about this. Obviously, this is more efficient, better government services from LED street lighting and associated controls, and you know that's really important. For our office, we are the Office of Sustainability. We're really focused on Greenworks Philadelphia, the city's sustainability vision. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the environmental framework and how that fits in and how that overlaps with some of the LED street lighting work. To do that, I'm going to give you a really quick background on our office and some of the things we do, just because I'm sure a lot of folks are not familiar with that. So Office of Sustainability was founded by Mayor Nutter in 2008. From there, they wrote the first Greenworks strategy. We've had a number of different plans from trail master plans, green stormwater infrastructure plans, climate resiliency plans, all of that culminating in 2015, which was kind of when the first Greenworks sunsetted. Just recently, this past November, our office reintroduced Greenworks in the Kenney administration, and this was focused a little bit more broadly on how can we bring benefits to city government. So specifically, kind of taking these big kind of ideas around whether we're talking about climate or transportation, and I'll start with transportation, I guess. Some of the previous transportation metrics were about reducing vehicle miles traveled. If you're an average everyday Philadelphian, that means absolutely nothing to you. What you really care about is how can I have safe, affordable transportation network that gets me to my job and gets me to the places I need to go. So the new Greenworks is really more focused around the benefits that it brings to Philadelphians. This is especially important, as you heard Ellen kind of talk a little bit about, equity as a real priority for the mayor. This city has a 26% poverty rate. When we're talking about bringing sustainability to the masses, we need to make sure that we're bringing it equitably. LED street lighting and associated kind of features there are really a great feature because this is not just a center city application. This is something that can be brought into the neighborhoods and bring a broad set of benefits to folks. More broadly, a lot of our work right now is focused on reducing carbon emissions in the city. We track citywide carbon emissions. That's becoming more difficult if you've been following the news cycle. I'm from one of the bullheaded departments that Ellen was talking about before, and our interest is reducing greenhouse gases among kind of implementing other things. We've got strong mayoral commitments, and so it's important, I guess, to realize that when you kind of think about the city and its fragments, and of which we are one, and Ellen and I are working together very, very closely to sort of unify that vision and make sure that the Smart Cities roadmap is really inclusive of all departments. But there's a reason that all those departments are kind of bullheaded. It's because, if you're the fire department, you're going to care about fires. You're not going to care necessarily how your data is being organized. If you're the Office of Sustainability, you're going to care about carbon emissions. And these are hard goals. They're hard targets. And it's important that everybody's kind of passionate for a reason, I guess, in that sense. So one of the big things that we're doing is our energy master plan. And our citywide energy vision. This is basically our take to look at a data-driven approach of how we can reach our long-term carbon goals and energy management goals. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but we'll be launching that later this summer and probably into early fall for the citywide energy vision. And this is basically the city's map for reaching an 80% reduction in carbon emissions by 2050. Those are really big goals. And what we're trying to do is coordinate smart city applications in that as much as possible. So you guys probably heard Ellen talk a little bit about the Smart Cities Roadmap. I'm not going to talk about all the different things we're doing in the building space and the utility bill management space, except to say that we're doing a lot. We're incorporating all of our work into a wide variety of buildings that are being retrofitted, either through the rebuild process or through the regular capital process in city government. Right now, we've got about 20 to 40 buildings that are connected through building automation systems. We're trying to get them better connected, better organized, have data standards so we can then kind of tie that all together and start to put analytics on top of that, understand where buildings aren't shutting down, where lights are not turning off, and where we're wasting energy. That's a big part of our strategy as we look at our kind of broad goals. So all that to talk a little bit about LED street lighting. And street lighting in Philadelphia. Presently in Philadelphia, there's 120,000 city street lights. We spend about between $11 and $14 million in annual costs. That's nearly 10% of government electricity usage is just going to street lighting. LEDs are tremendously more efficient, so there's a great kind of benefit there. We heard a little bit about some of the operations cost benefits. For the city, there's also a lot of co-benefits. Superior light quality, visibility, and color recognition. That's both from a kind of resident safety and public safety aspect if there's an emergency, but also from pedestrian, bicycle, vehicle safety. Just better lit streets are easier to see people and hopefully less crashes on the road. We're hearing more about the lighting management system and how the controllability can basically help us enhance efficiency, but also kind of take out some of the customer service work that's out there. So right now, one of the main interfaces for an LED or for a light going out is through our 311 system. So it could take a little while for somebody to kind of get there and realize that the street light's out, actually report it. That feedback gets routed through 311 to the streets department. Then they deploy somebody to fix that. Whereas in a controllability sequence, where there's controls for street lighting, that would be instantaneous. Street lights or the streets department would right away know, okay, that light is out. We'll send out a crew, or we'll send out a crew to these 15 sites because we know there's multiple ones that are out throughout the city. We do think there's going to be some reduced maintenance and costs, though I don't want to oversell that because I think the city's not looking to reduce any of its staffing, so those are still the same number of people. It's really more about more efficient delivery of customer service and of service for the city. And as you heard from Ellen and as you're hearing from Glenn and other folks, this can really be kind of one of the platforms for smart city infrastructure. So the opportunity is big. We think this could save about $2 million in energy costs. We think it could reduce city government energy or greenhouse gases by about 8%. So the real question is, well, why aren't we doing this? Why have we not deployed this broadly? This is between a $60 and $70 million project. If you look at $2 million in savings from energy, that's not a financeable project just on its own. We need to figure out ways to monetize some of the co-benefits and monetize some of the other. We basically need to figure out a way to finance this project, and we're not quite there yet. We're trying to look at what other cities have done and maybe trying to break off some of the lights that are in a little bit of a, not the exciting ones, not the ones down Broad Street, which are all fancy and unique, and also tend to be very expensive to replace, but just focus on the things in the neighborhood, the regular everyday Cobra heads, and maybe just do a project on that. And I think that's likely the direction we're going to have to go in, just because of the cost of all those decorative of lights, but that's what we're kind of currently struggling with. We're also looking right now at some of the American Medical Association issued some guidance about color and temperature of lighting, and our city standards right now don't fall into that standard, so we want to experiment a little bit more with 300K light, which is a little bit of a warmer light, as opposed to a, 3,000K light, as opposed to a 4,000K light, which has been the city standard thus far. So if you walk around Center City, you've seen that there is a fair patch of LED streetlights, but it's not distributed. It's not able to grow at a pace that we need it to grow. And there's certain inevitability to this work. These lights that we have that are old are going to be replaced eventually, but I think it's in a lot of our best interest to do this immediately, comprehensively, strategically, and also integrate it with smart cities so we can serve it as a platform for other places. So I think that's all I have, and looking forward to questions a little bit later. I'm going to pass it off to you, Charlie.
All right, so I'll talk slowly. You guys are a tough crowd. That was a joke. Okay. So I want to talk a bit about our solutions at Sensus. We're probably the one company you've never heard of here that's actually fairly large, and we're fairly well established, mostly known for smart grid solutions. I think Glenn mentioned that our network established for PECO serves over 2 million devices. These devices happen to be electric meters and gas meters, but you could fill in the blank on what these devices are. The network is agnostic to the type of devices. Frankly, most of the sensors I hear about in the smart city space are much less data rich than an electric meter by far, much less demanding. So I want to talk a bit about having outcomes drive your choice of technology. Now, I go to a lot of cities that are looking at and putting together smart city plans, strategic plans. We're part of the Smart City Council. That's why I yelled out Austin before, because I'm the Sensus executive sponsor for that winning bid, and each of those 5 cities gets 3 free base stations for a year on our nickel to hang at whatever devices they want to hang off that network. So I've been spending a lot of time in Austin. And by the way, they understand, I sound more like them than I sound like most of you, I suppose. That's a joke again. Wow. Let's have fun with this, folks. This is exciting. So who is Sensus, this unknown company? Well, actually, Sensus alone is about $1 billion a year in sales worldwide. We're owned by a parent company, Xylem, that's about $5 billion a year, publicly traded. We have huge networks established across the world where we're providing smart electric, gas, water, lighting, distribution automation, demand response, many of these kind of geeky things that utilities and cities use, but the individual customer is unaware of. It's kind of the hidden grid. We're very familiar with that grid that services that device in our back pocket, our smartphone, but we're not so sure where the grid is that services all the services that we expect. So we're fairly large. We serve a lot of customers, large utilities like PECO, but we also will serve a town of 3,000 water meters with a small deployment just for water. We serve most of Southern Company, which is Georgia, Alabama, Florida as well. But again, we serve small areas and small towns alike. So I'm going to give you 3 quick thoughts. And some of this is gleaned from my discussions with other cities. So I'm trying to bring kind of the other cities' input to you to use. I hope Ellen is still in the room. Maybe she left. I'm not sure if she is or not. She said 3 things, if I can remember them, that were very important. She mentioned repurposing assets we already have. She mentioned digital inclusion. She mentioned safety. Then Glenn added to that and mentioned security, network and data security. And these 4 elements should be and are in most of these strategic smart city plans that I've read and I've seen. So let me say something else about cities. Cities are not monolithic structures. Cities have dense urban areas. What a view. What a view out the window here. And I'll talk a bit more about that view. But they also have campuses. I mean, Philadelphia is very unique in the huge number of campuses, schools that are here in town. Boston, there are other cities that share that benefit. So, and these campuses are almost self-contained cities within a city. Oftentimes, not always, these campuses have their own electrical distribution network, water network, street lights, and they operate as a self-contained entity. But yet they share services from the city and from PICO and others. I'm going to talk about campuses in particular because campuses have a unique issue around co-ed safety. And then communities. Someone mentioned earlier about this idea of labeling, instead of saying smart cities, why not say smart communities? Because communities is much broader. It's much more inclusive of all the rest. So I'm going to talk a bit about this idea of digital inclusion that Ellen mentioned as it relates to communities. So I'm giving you kind of a compilation, a gleaning of some of the other efforts underway right now. So let's talk a bit about cities in Georgia. We provide a network for smart electric metering for 2.5 million electric meters in the state of Georgia. And Georgia has Atlanta, we all know, but it also has very rural areas. There's a town in Georgia I went through recently. It's so small, and it said the name of the town, and below the name it said, Kundal, capital of the world. That's how small this place was. And the other side of the sign said the name of the town. I mean, it was that thin. That's a joke. Okay, well, I'll just keep moving on. So let's look at Georgia Power. Georgia Power is providing lighting services with time of use billing rates. If you're from the utility industry, that's crazy. You know, I am a time of use user. I have different costs for my electricity at home from 9 p.m. to other parts of the night and during the day. And they're doing the same for streetlights, for retail customers, so they can group and charge them for their consumption of the street lights, or the retail lights in this case, as a function of what time of night they use that energy, so people can curtail usage at different parts of the night. And they provide regulated and unregulated lighting services. Now, let's talk about New Orleans a bit. Another one of my favorite cities. I was down there recently, and I was talking to a councilman for the 9th Ward. If you remember, the 9th Ward was devastated by Katrina. And I made the mistake, not knowing my geography. I said, they were so excited about smart lighting and our network. And I said, let's put these around the Superdome. Well, the Superdome is not in the 9th Ward. And his comment to me was very striking. He said, you know, the Superdome is not the 9th Ward. The Superdome gets all the technology. The 9th Ward doesn't get technology. You need to put this here. Here's where people left and never came back. And businesses shuttered and never came back. So if you want to help a city, why don't you help this part of the city? I'm going to touch a bit more on that in just a minute. And they're starting with smart lighting in New Orleans because the infrastructure is in poor shape. Now, I'm going kind of quickly here. I'll hang around later if you want to ask other questions. Let's look at University of Alabama. Now, University of Alabama, that picture is a picture from the campus after a tornado came through Tuscaloosa in 2011. You may remember this. I think 2 co-eds lost their lives. Now, the morbidly ironic part of that is I remember it vividly because we serve Alabama Power. So our outage detection of our electric meter network was showing the path of the storm in real time, going for Tuscaloosa. But the campus has their own network. They did not have our network. They did not know what part of campus the tornado was going to hit. Alabama Power did, but they didn't. And this is what happened. If you can see this picture, it's quite gruesome. After that, they approached us and said, we want to have a solution on the campus where we could sector and grid the campus. And if we ever have this thing happen again, we will know which section it will, if we know what section the storm will go to, or heaven forbid, if there's an active shooter on a part of campus, we can hit one button and all the lights in that sector flash. And every student can see that and know that means lockdown. They want to use it for savings, and for maintenance, but they also want to use it for co-ed safety. Now, as a father of 3 20-some-year-olds, all of which are out of college now, during that time when they were in college, I cared a great deal about co-ed safety. And you've got campuses right here in this city that care the same. So I think the campus environment is unique because safety actually in some cases trumps savings, and so business cases are not always on savings in a college campus. So let's talk about Austin, Texas, one of my favorite towns, as I told you. Now Austin's kind of interesting. Austin's, they say they're weird. It's a wonderful city, great music scene, high technology, huge college campus there. But did you know that Austin is one of the most economically segregated cities in the country? They're not proud of that. Back in the 20s, a law was enacted that pushed certain people to East Austin. And although that law is obviously no longer in place, you could draw a line between East Austin and the rest of Austin. We all think of Austin, we're thinking West Austin. I dare say any of you have traveled to East Austin. So when they, at the workshop, when they said we want to have digital inclusion or smart city inclusion, which what they were saying was we want whatever services we roll out for Austin have to cover all of Austin. If they only cover the best parts of Austin, then that's no good. Now, why is that important? Because smart utilities have a regulatory compact to serve all of the residents. I can guarantee you every house in East Austin has an electric meter, has a water meter, has services. The fear, and I'm going to say it's the fear I have, is that we are racing towards digital exclusion for smart cities. Most of the smart city funding, most of the smart cities that win awards happen to be large cities. And within those large cities, my fear is certain parts of those large cities, i.e. the nicer, more expensive, higher tax-based retail district, is getting that juice. The vendors are flocking there. We're talking about how we're going to have all these devices in these parts of town, and the rest of the city and the rest of the countryside is largely excluded. That's one of the reasons why we're doing a lighting demonstration, not just in downtown Philadelphia, but also in Berwyn. All right, I got to move along. City of Long Beach has a gas network. They also are adding street lighting. Portland, Oregon has significant urban mobility issues, and they have homelessness issues, and they're trying to solve those issues. Again, outcomes should drive your choice of technology. We, and myself included, we're technology providers, but I would say to the city, to Ellen, if she's still in the room, step back and define clearly the outcomes you want, and then it should be more obvious what technology solutions you need. In one case, I don't know if she's aware, there is a network. It's being run by Pico that could serve many of the services that she mentioned earlier versus having to build out new networks. We have networks in place. So I have a bad habit. My wife is not a fan of it. I'll just pause there because that kind of sounds creepy. And since I'm a lighting guy, I'm a smart lighting, smart city guy, I tend to go into cities at night and I run. And I've never been mugged. I have almost been hit before, but I've never been mugged. And I do this. I run, I take pictures of beautiful skylines. And I map this in my huge Twitterverse. It follows me, all three of them. And I see this, but I also see this. This is Austin, so I pick on Austin. I also see this. Lights out, broken lights, dark alleyways, unsafe places. I avoid those. But I see them, I take pictures, and I always bring them back. This is what we see on the lighting side, and this is what we would see if I had the nerve to run a little further out. And just so you won't feel excluded, I have run here in Philadelphia. Last time I was here, there was a light fair convention right down the block, and I ran 5.2 miles all through, and I took these pictures, and I always try to find safe places, but I'm not showing you the pictures of broken lights. I've only shown you the nice pictures. There's another slide I will save for another day. So I run because it gives me an idea of, is this city smart or not? So I'll just ask you to join me sometime in a run if you would like to. It's a lot of fun, kind of scary sometimes. I'll stop there. I think I've made my points. Might have some questions or maybe some hate mail. I'm not sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Gerald. We are up against time, I'm afraid, so just wanted to, I'd like to take you up on the run, but 8-minute miles, it's Looks a pretty good slide. Just a quick question. Try and keep your responses. Talk a little bit about the technology of the network, if you could, and I guess I'll throw that up to Glenn and we'll input from Charlie.
Thank you. As I alluded to in the slide, there's typically three components of any of these types of systems. One, I'll start again with the endpoint. So whether we started with electric meters, we added gas meters, we've added different telemetry units and control units for the power grid, and now we're adding the street lights. All those devices communicate at different frequencies or different intervals. They collect different amounts of data. The FlexNet network, as we've chosen, that's a brand name, a product offered by Census, is somewhat of a unique network. Many of the networks that are somewhat in vogue today are mesh networks. And that means that each different device talks to a neighboring device and relays information. Our network is more of a point-to-point network. So we know in most cases those devices are talking directly to some sort of network component. In this case, we call them base stations. Pico has about 175 base stations for the entire 2,100 square mile Pico service territory. So while we often think of getting them these collectors, these base stations on tall buildings, that's not always necessary. We've actually laid this network throughout our service territory with very little disruption. We typically do it on existing poles within substations or Pico facilities in most cases. That data is then collected and brought back to the head-end system, the master computer that really operates the system, and then data is passed on to the downstream devices, so the billing systems, the outage management systems, the asset management systems and such. And that really makes the whole ecosystem of the product line itself. We've been very pleased with that. It's performing well, it's serving our customers, and we look for a bright future with it.
Can I make one comment? Just for clarity, the FlexNet network is based on licensed spectrum. I know this comes up a lot. It's a point-to-multipoint network, which simply is the same thing you have here. Your phone doesn't talk to anybody else's phone. It talks straight to a base station. Our network works much the same. We own our spectrum from the FCC, just like AT&T, Verizon own their spectrum. It's not in the 902 to 928, which is the public spectrum. It's outside that. It's largely in the 900 to 950 range. But the spectrum that we own outright from the FCC, the only one operating in those frequencies. So it gives us some benefit. Just to tell you, we bought that spectrum years ago. Someone mentioned pager systems. Back when they went under, we bought a lot of that spectrum that they gave up. And we were a bit luckier than we were smart, because that was before online gaming and watching Game of Thrones in your cell phone, so it was fairly affordable. Now if you show up at FCC and you want to buy Spectrum, you better bring a big pocketbook. So we got kind of fortunate. We bought it when it was cheap, and we use it nationwide, so all of our solutions are on licensed Spectrum we own.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank all of you, Adam and Glenn and Charlie. And Pete, what do we have next on time?
Next we have Michelle with Cisco, Michelle Majora, right here, ready to go. I want to thank Glenn, Adam, and Charlie. Where's he from again? I don't know. It's that guy. He talks too fast for me. I couldn't follow him. But that said, in the interest of time, and I hand it off to Michelle.
Thanks, Pete. I only run 3 miles at a time, and I'm not funny. So this will be easy. The other part that I want to say divides Austin is I-35. I-35 divides Austin, east and west. And I find it fascinating that economic development was so linked to infrastructure connectivity in the last century, and now we're talking about digital connectivity. It's very just interesting and important, and obviously why we're all here today. This is not a rhetorical question to me. I think about this probably more than most of you do. I think we use the word smart around different types of infrastructure without really thinking what that really means. So I'll tell you a story. I've been a transportation engineer for about 20 years. I've worked in technology about the last 5 at a startup, and then I was at IBM and now at Cisco. And I was driving, I think I told this story in Orlando, but it's a good story.
Oh, I loved it.
I was driving from Baltimore to Washington with my kids in the car. We were getting off one airplane, I had to get on another. My youngest daughter said, "What causes traffic, Mom?" And I'm like, oh my God, this is my big moment, right? I'm talking about queue lengths and how one vehicle disrupts the flow, and then it has this trickle effect across the network, same as our sort of network connectivity. And she said richly, well, why doesn't the first person in the queue just go faster? So I think as we kind of move into what we can do with technology to make transportation smart, the reason I tell this story is because I think that if we can make that first person in the queue go faster, but what if we can take that person sort of out of the decision process in general? And I think that's why transportation technology is a little bit different and a little bit special when we think about sort of IoT and the relationship. So my presentation is really focused on what I tell my public sector customers about how to essentially make transportation smarter. And we do work on connected vehicles on the OEM side, and I'll talk a little bit about that later in my presentation as well. But the idea, and it's not really shocking for anybody in the room, but the idea is that we take data from devices, we use it to make better decisions in how we operate our transportation network, and we want to improve the performance of the transportation system and also the experience of our customers. So do I have any transportation people in the room? I hope I have one. Okay, I don't have one. Yay. Okay, so you might say, or other transportation practitioners might say, why is this different than ITS? We've had ITS for years. We have variable message signs. We have, all these different, we have loop detectors, for crying out loud, right? So what's different now, what I tell my public sector customers is that, look, we've got new types of sensors. We've got much faster networks. There's a pervasiveness of IoT. Our customers expect things to be very quick. And we also are looking at the vehicle becoming a sensor itself. So while we think of autonomous vehicles as really exciting and sexy, the fact that we can use the vehicle to provide better information to how we operate the transportation system is really, really important. We can also do much more at the edge of the network to process that data. We want to be able to make those decisions very quickly. If we're trying to take the human out of the decision process, we better be able to do things faster than the human brain could potentially be able to do them. And we know that we want to integrate with connected and automated vehicle applications to improve the performance of the transportation system. So I would say those are the things that make transportation from a public sector perspective and IoT space a little bit different than ITS. So sort of the trends, right? I mean, everybody talks about cars that drive themselves, which is great. I would argue we actually have the technology today for cars to drive themselves. What's more important is that the cars are connected to each other and connected to somehow the transportation infrastructure in and of itself. We can't just have cars driving around and aren't kind of sensing what's going on with the rest of the environment. And as we can see from some of the trends, we're kind of headed in that way. I would say another trend that I would think that we should start to consider over the next few years is this idea of decommissioning assets. So you'll hear other transportation professionals say, we can't even afford to maintain the transportation network we have today. What are we going to do with IoT? How are we going to bring technology into transportation? Potentially, we're not going to need the same lane widths, shoulders. Our infrastructure may not need to be managed the same way because we're going to have technology and improve the system performance. Of course, we're also seeing changes in the way we use our vehicles, which I love this because every time I go to Home Depot, I don't have a truck, and I'm like, if I had access to a truck, that would make me very happy, so I just don't end up going to Home Depot. But as we know, we're talking more and more about shared mobility, where today we've got one or two vehicles at home, maybe they're sitting, not being used 80% of the time. We're transitioning to, at least the automobile OEMs will tell you, we're transitioning to more of a shared mobility environment where the individual can access a different vehicle for different purposes. And as we know, in Austin, again, to bring up the Austin example, Ford is already experimenting with this in Austin, but it sort of remains to be seen what the customer will actually value and utilize in this area. But the point is that everything is pushing us to this digital connectivity for the transportation network. We know that by 2020, 90% of the new vehicles will have some kind of connectivity. And we're seeing deployments of smart infrastructure around transportation already today. So I like to tell my public sector customers, we don't have to wait. There are things that we can do today with device connectivity and data to really actually improve system condition and performance. And this is, you give these slides to somebody and they put in all this automation. I don't need that. Okay. So this is really Cisco's view of what we think about when we talk about connected and automated vehicles and then connected transportation infrastructure. So the idea is to really enable an end-to-end vehicle-to infrastructure, vehicle-to-vehicle architecture for connected and autonomous. I think I mentioned that I work sort of more in the top space of this chart, which is the applications that can better support the public sector. And then we've got a technology at the bottom called Jasper that does all the in-vehicle networking in the car. It also provides a way for the user with their cell phone to interact with their vehicle, and then for the vehicle to kind of report information back to the OEM and the manufacturer. So the idea is that we take that information that's coming off the vehicle and we can use it for better decisions, but we can also push data back to the vehicle so that the vehicle can start to make better decisions and take the user sort of out of that decision process. And I know I'm a little bit short on time too, so I'll try and hurry up. Why is this important to smart cities? The US DOT obviously provided funding for smart cities. The first 3 vision elements were directly related to transportation. And so we know that if you're thinking about a smart city, smart community, the transportation really is going to be probably the top priority. So what do we do? I'll kind of go quickly through this, and it's not so much, this wasn't so much designed to sort of give you a roadmap of what you need to do, but for me to highlight the sort of different types of stakeholders that are going to be involved in a smart transportation project, and maybe sort of characterized by the types of folks in the room today. So what do we need for smart transportation? We need infrastructure. We need IT infrastructure, WAN backhaul and our smart sensors. We need software, either at the edge of the network, or we need software to better manage and normalize all those data coming in. And we need to implement the type of applications that we can use to operate the transportation network. So what do I mean by that? And why is this important? It's important because the first piece of this infrastructure is not the stuff that the civil engineer at the Department of Public Works will necessarily understand, right? This is the IT side of the house. And it just sort of underscores the importance of the different type of stakeholders that have to be included to implement smart transportation. Of course, we're looking at enabling with DSRC gateways. We can probably debate whether DSRC is going to be the final way to get data off the vehicle, but it certainly is what we have for now. And the next piece of it, so let's say we deploy lots of sensors and we've got lots of data coming into some sort of traffic management center, or potentially all these sensors have their own cloud little applications. How do we look at this different data and put it together so our operators, our transportation professionals, can make better decisions around it? And so this is a piece where you can also see sort of a transition of Cisco, because we're thinking and talking about software. We're not just the plumbers anymore. So we're very much interested in how do we normalize the data across all those different types of sensors and show it in one place so that we can start to make it actionable. We can't have an operator in a traffic management center looking at 20 different cloud platforms to try and make a better decision. But the other piece of this is the analytics around what needs to be done at the edge of the network, because some of those decisions have to be made very, very quickly, essentially at the sensor. There are things related to safety that we don't have time to sort of transmit it back to the cloud and then back down. So we can probably dig more into that later on a panel or in the Q&A. But the last piece of it is that the applications need to be based on the goals and objectives of the agency. And these are the engineers, these are the civil engineers that run the Department of Public Works that are trying to improve the performance, improve safety. And you can see now that we've brought in kind of this cross-functional team from IT the whole way to potentially the CEO of a Department of Transportation. And so this really involves the collaboration and unsiloing of the decision process to implement sort of smart transportation solutions for connected and automated. We generally we generally work sort of at all those levels, right, at Cisco, but mostly for my part, my piece is educating executives about why all these things are so important. And so what can we do? I would say that I think that we know that connected and automated vehicles are coming. We've got DSRC-enabled vehicles right now in Cadillacs. We have other DSRC-enabled applications. And so it's really time to start thinking and planning for these from the public perspective and taking control and ownership of that so that the public sector can sort of participate in the disruption and not necessarily be the disruptee. So I think that's what I have for now, unless I don't know that we have time for questions. Should I just, one question. Is it from Pete?
No, I'm going to...
Wow, nobody has a question. Wow. That was either really bad or really good.
Oh, it was terrific. Okay, be careful. Okay, well, Michelle, thank you so much. Personally, you're gonna, this is a passion of mine, what's happening now with connected transportation, autonomous vehicles. I'm going to stay home and not go out. But no, seriously, it's going to really change. And Michelle, I hear numbers like 5 terabits a day. Is that about right per car?
25 per hour.
25 terabits? Okay, so...
For all the cars, which is 4 times the amount collected in the entire world today.
Okay, so it's big. You network guys, if you're not paying attention to this and if your companies are not working towards this, you're missing the biggest opportunity that's going to come down the road in the next few years. So that said, Mr. Machine to Machine, if our host, me, doesn't mess this up, his presentation will come up seamlessly, and it did. That's a first. Oh, maybe I lied. Okay, terrific. Tom Greger, the president of Ingenu.
Thank you, Peter. Seeing as I'm the last thing between lunch, I will move things pretty quickly. Did get an opportunity to kind of introduce Ingenu earlier on the panel. This is more of a kind of in-depth on what we're doing at Ingenu, but also to cater to the machine industry, which was formerly called machine to machine or M2M, and I started this back when I was at T-Mobile. We told people that we were working on M2M projects, and they thought that meant mobile to mobile back in the day because people didn't know what M2M was. And I think it was refreshing to see in a prior presentation talking about telemetry, and that's pretty much one of the early buzzwords or adjectives of what machine to machine has now formally grown into, which is now the Internet of Things. So just jumping into it, what are we doing at Ingenu? We've developed a technology that has been exclusively built for machine communications. So not only is the technology built for machines, we're now in the process of building out a network here domestically as well as partnering with licensees globally to now deliver purpose-built networks for machines only. So I'm not going to be jumping into what Michelle's doing and trying to support terabits an hour. That is completely not where this technology is aligned. So we're looking at supporting machine communications that are a low bandwidth, that we're talking about bits and bytes of information. We're talking about companies that want to understand where their assets are, so that location data, that latitude, the longitude, its temperature, its humidity, things of that nature is what the technology was built to support. So just a quick look at who is Ingenu. We were founded in 2008 as OnRamp Wireless. Has anyone heard of OnRamp Wireless that's here today? So I see a couple hands. And how about Ingenu? Before today, did anyone had heard of Ingenu? Okay, so my marketing guys have some work to do. But essentially, we were founded in 2008, headquartered today in San Diego, California. We're led by pretty much a who's who of wireless. The chairman of our board is Dick Lynch. Dick Lynch was the former CTO at Verizon, who basically put a stake in the ground and declared LTE as the next 4G technology, and the world followed. Also on our board is Ivan Seidenberg, Verizon's CEO. Serving in advisory capacity is Dr. Andrew Viterbi. Dr. Viterbi was the CTO at Qualcomm and the founder of CDMA technology, as well as John Horn, our CEO, who built the MDM channel at T-Mobile and was named an MDM pioneer by the Connected World Organization some years ago. So we're driven and guided by the best in the business. These executives that saw CDMA and LTE were the right technologies for consumers. They recognize that RPMA, which is random phase multiple access, is the right technology for machine communications. So we've developed this technology. We hold 32 patents around that technology, and that's what allows us to license this technology to other providers around the world. Today we're operating in over 20 countries outside of the US, and just some of our key early customers with San Diego Gas and Electric, Shell, GE, Enbridge, and some others. So kind of what I mentioned in terms of the RPMA technologies is significant innovation for machine communications as CDMA was for traditional cellular, and that's from Dr. Viterbi. Looking at the broad market, where does this technology fit? A study was done by James Bremen Associates, and of all of the M2M or IoT solutions that have been deployed to date, 86% of those are using less than 3 megabytes of data a month. So machines do not require large bandwidth of communication needs for them to, again, send their bits and bytes of those attributes that I mentioned earlier. It's location, temperature, humidity, and things like that. So the different industry verticals where machines exist and the solutions, today we're talking smart city with transportation, safety, parking meters, streetlights, but this pertains to oil and gas, smart grids, smart agriculture, automotive, security, and the smart home. Where are we going from today forward with the different technologies that can support this? This was from ABI Research. They looked at it. Non-cellular low power wide area technologies, that's LoRa, that's Ingenu's RPMA technology, will far outpace what the traditional cellular operators are doing today. I touched on the evolution from 2G, 3G, 4G. Well, now it's going to even be fractured further. There's LTE Cat 1, there's LTE Cat 0, there's LTE Cat M, there's M1, there's M2, and there's going to be narrowband IoT. It's a very complicated and fragmented environment out there for whether you're people in this room trying to understand and really navigate that. And that's what we're doing with RPMA. It's bringing simplicity, reliability, and stability to an environment where machines never had that before. They've always been neglected and looked at, in terms of taking a backseat to consumer needs on the public networks. So what did we do with RPMA? What are the 4 things machines need? They need a low-cost ability to be able to connect to a network and send their data. They certainly need coverage, low bandwidth, and we talk about a long life cycle. That's the disservice that has been done to machines with the technology evolutions of 2G to 3G to 4G. So with RPMA and being able to hold all the patents around that technology, we can make guarantees in terms of that network life cycle will be there to support that asset. So when you place that electric meter, that needs to be there for 15, 20 years, we can now back that up and make sure that the RPMA technology will be backwards compatible as we bring new features and functions to that technology. So we've deployed this in the universally available 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. That spectrum is available globally, which really caters to the ecosystem of device manufacturers. You know, the holy grail for a device manufacturer is to have one SKU that they can sell globally. To try and create one M2M IoT device today using cellular, I believe you need 17 different SKUs to support all of the countries and networks around the world using a cellular technology. With RPMA, you can now create one SKU and sell that globally. In terms of our deployment strategy, we're actually running almost two different business models under the one roof of Ingenu today. So we're a technology company in that we've created the technology of RPMA and hold all the IP around that we're licensing to others to build a network. Here in the US, we're building the machine network. So we launched the machine network a year and a half ago. Today we have 28 markets that are on air throughout the US, and we're striving towards having a nationwide network in place by the end of 2018. Outside of the US, we're partnering with third-party network operators, infrastructure providers, and giving them geographical exclusivity, over that different country. Today we have 32 different countries that are being deployed and built out with the RPMA technology. The technology itself is a star topology, so the different endpoints that would be distributed throughout a city, whether it's a parking meter, street light, a vehicle, HVAC system, they all communicate with their radio module that's embedded in them back to our access point. And that access point is what we're co-locating out onto a tower or a rooftop, as we discussed earlier. From there, each one of our access points is communicating back securely to our network operations center. And then from there, we have our intellect management platform that we've partnered with the different SIs and software integrators that can now take that data and run that into their analytics and visualization tools and provide that to their end customers. Just to touch on our network deployment, where we are today, you know, we started from east to west around the southern third of the United States. Today we have, as I said, 28 markets that are on air. We are, you know, building out, and you know, one thing that might jump out at you is, well, certainly North Dakota is not the southern third of the U.S., Tom. When we did get our start in 2008, the technology was originally sold as a private network solution, mainly for utilities and the oil and gas industry. A year and a half ago, when we changed our go-to-market strategy and launched the machine network, the public network, a few of our different private network partners that really didn't want to be in the business of being a network operator have transitioned their networks into our public machine network. One of those is a company, WellAware, and WellAware has built out significant presence in the oil and gas space in the United States. So that's why you see some coverage up in the Bakken Shale Field in North Dakota. Today we've got 2 sites up in Prudhoe Bay covering the North Slope of Alaska, and pretty much a lot of the territory down in Texas and the Eagle Ford and Permian basins are covered today, serving that oil and gas industry. So while we do not have coverage on air today in Philadelphia, there's a lot of network planning and applications and zoning, building permitting going on behind the scenes. But this is a significant coverage that we'll provide to the city, and we're able to achieve this with 37 access points. And I think there was another technology that's got 175. So you can just see the amount of coverage and signal that we get from an RPMA technology to be able to achieve the same footprint with a fraction of the infrastructure required from other technologies. Just to zoom in further, what would the city center look like? And this is where we're targeting with our initial phase of our build out, is to really go where the people are, cover that with just a greater than 99% reliability rate to be able to support different smart city solutions and applications. Kind of taking a further 30,000 foot look at this regional coverage. Other than the Pine Barrens there in New Jersey, we're looking to really cover where the people are, where the interstates are, and again, this is we're a year and a half into our build. As my boss tells me, we're going to always be building. As soon as you stop, then you're basically dead. So we want to bring coverage to where our customers need the coverage, whether that's the North Slope of Alaska or down to a sugarcane field out in Florida, which I have a video to share with you. We're going to keep bringing coverage to where our customers ask for it. So just taking a look at LPWA and the different kind of differentiators between other technologies that are in that same umbrella. There's ISM bands where technologies have been deployed in. So here in the US, you could deploy in the 900 megahertz frequency. In Europe, it's either 433 or in the 800s. If you want to go down to Africa, it's 400s. Over in Asia, 300 or 400. Very fragmented. And the 2.4 gigahertz, as I said earlier, it's universally available. So again, to achieve 30 billion connected devices by 2020, how is that going to happen? You need to bring simplicity and reliability, stability, and security to solutions. One way to really bring simplicity to it is to have one true radio frequency that can support the IoT globally. And with, I mentioned earlier, we got our start with private networks. This is a proven technology. We have 38 private network customers today running in over 20 different countries around the globe. In terms of coverage reliability, I mentioned earlier we can achieve up to 200 square miles of coverage with a single access point. We're seeing that today in ideal topography of Phoenix. I don't see that when I get to Charlotte, North Carolina, or Atlanta with rolling hills and other challenges. But we are seeing roughly 100 to 105 square miles of coverage from each one of our APs that we deploy. In terms of data rates, this is a bidirectional technology. Again, we were purpose-built for machines, so different than what a cellular technology affords you. The uplink is actually greater than the downlink over RPMA. So again, if you're looking at these speeds, comparing it to 4G LTE, this isn't going to impress you because these are more like 2G speeds. But again, sufficient to meet the needs of machines and IoT solutions today. And what's important is that we do have a downlink channel that is sufficient that when you want to upgrade the firmware, change configuration settings, and actually communicate out to that asset, there is a data link channel sufficient to do that. So that's how you can truly deploy that sensor embedded in the concrete and let that live out there for 10, 15 years and be able to upgrade the firmware and do things to it over its lifetime. So just real quick, I'll just jump through a couple case studies. One of our early partners, San Diego Gas and Electric, has deployed a private network using RPMA throughout San Diego County. Originally, they were using a mesh technology for their AMI solution. They found that mesh did not reach all of the residents, so they brought in RPMA to overlay over that. And with the coverage characteristics, we're able to now hit and reach all of those hard-to-reach meters. Jumping down to a utility down in Chile, Chilquinta has partnered with GE to roll out AMI meters as well as fault circuit indicators to manage their electrical grid in Chile. City of Riverside was another one of our private network customers. This is a real private-public partnership that we were able to do with Riverside. They were embarking on deploying their own private RPMA network. We approached them a year ago with our go-to-market strategy of the machine network, the public network. So they allowed us to co-locate on their city infrastructure. We built that network. We support and monitor that network on their behalf. In turn, we gave them a very aggressive rate for all the endpoints now that they want to add onto that network. So today they're in the process of rolling out fault circuit indicators, and that is basically a device you put on the overhead electrical line, and it detects the voltage in those lines, and if there's a fault, they know it right away. They don't have to wait for the residents to call in and say they have a power outage. They now can dispatch a truck and now have real targeted response to where that outage is. So great partnership working with Riverside. So lastly, in terms of just one of our case studies, we talk about smart cities. Well, here's a smart island. The entire island of Aruba is under RPMA today. They originally brought it in to manage their AMI and smart grid initiatives, and that is now grown to other solutions and applications with streetlights and fault circuit indicators there as well. And then I think I've got one last video. Does this sound? I'm not going to play Pete. Yeah. Well, unfortunately, this is, we don't have the volume working, but this is a pilot we're doing down in the sugarcane fields in South Florida. One of the issues that U.S. Sugar was having was finding a technology that the RF could penetrate through the dense sugarcane fields. So this is our director of applications going out with one of our test devices. And my gosh, I don't know how he was able to, muster the courage to crawl through the sugarcane field. But they're going deep into the sugarcane field and testing out our signal there. And what U.S. Sugar is now doing is partnering with our partner AgriSource. They have a device that now is measuring the moisture levels of the soil and temperature and communicating that back up, so they now have more intelligence of how they can now manage and grow their crops. And that's just kind of one use case of what we're doing in the smart agricultural space as well. So with that, I think I'm a little over and we've got lunch waiting, but I'll take any questions if you have anything available.
Tom is a sponsor, so be nice. Questions for Tom?
So a lot of the cases that you mentioned seem to be kind of static in nature. So does this technology also help in mobility application?
We do support mobility. To your point, we did get our start with utilities and oil and gas opportunities. So if you looked at kind of our product portfolio from solution providers today, it has a lean University City, which is a neighborhood within the city. For you folks who are not familiar with the city, or even if you're here and you're not overly familiar. So if you look, and you can't see of course in the back, but that away is south, this away is north, that's New Jersey. To the west, across the Schuylkill, which is like used to be the Sahara but no more, is University C. So if you see on the map, to your left, my right, it's where the universities, or at least two of the large institutions in Philadelphia are. So that would be Penn and Drexel, really driving a lot of behavior out there. There are some large players as well. Peter's here from CHOP, Children's Hospital of Pennsylvania. Brandywine has been playing around by the train station, which is the second busiest train station in the United States. Wexford has been partnering with University Science Center, as well as others, and Southern Land, which is a large company, has recently completed one of their residential developments. For you numbers wonks, which I suspect I'm one of them, but for you numbers wonks in the audience, in University City there's 72,088 jobs right now. There's a population currently of 48,589. There is average wages of $46,504, office occupancy of 93%, retail occupancy 89%, residential occupancy of 90%. Silly good numbers for our city. There are over 42,956 college or university students in that sort of circle pocket of the area, and there are over 17,169 households that live and work and some play in University City. The big employers out there, as one would expect a bit, are the University of Pennsylvania, 16,705 employees. Next, it would be Penn Medicine, 14,161. CHOP with 9,925 employees. Drexel with 3,252.
the Veterans Administration with 2,313, and the dreaded IRS with 4,221 employees, working around the clock for your good there in University City. So again, a lot of activity has gone on. These three are very familiar with it. Some in the city have seen it through the cranes and through the little bit of the traffic. But in the last 7 years, there's been over $8.5 billion with a B dollars spent in University City, which is a staggering sum of money. No other place in the city has seen that kind of investment, and the investment is being essentially driven by these three and some other private players who I mentioned earlier, Brandywine, publicly traded company, as well as Wexford, as well as Southern Land, investing serious capital. So with that as an overview, I'm going to ask them a couple of general questions. We're going to have a dialogue, hopefully. And again, feel free to, this has not been an overly inquisitive audience, but now that you've been nourished with food, hopefully that will pick itself up. So, in 2 minutes or less, who are you and who do you work for? What do you do? Peter, kick it off and we'll go down that way.
It's always hard to go first, but I am Peter Grollman. I'm Senior Vice President for Public Affairs at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So I am responsible for our external affairs portfolio. So public relations, marketing, government affairs, community relations, diversity and inclusion. And so to that end, when I sum it up for people, I have the honor to really go out and to tell our story in terms of the patient care that we provide, our role as a charity of choice, and as an economic engine here in our region and more. And so about the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, hospital was founded in 1855. We now have 14,000 employees, 53 locations in 2 states. We just added an affiliation in New York with Mount Sinai Hospital. We're largest pediatric research institute in the country, largest trainer of pediatric residents in the country as well. And so to that end, I look forward to sharing our story with you and taking your questions.
Thanks, Peter. Deb?
My name is Debbie Buchwald. I'm the Executive Director of Corporate Relations in an office called Corporate Relations and Economic Development at Drexel University. My role is corporate engagement with industry to create reciprocal value partnerships that integrate innovation, which is everything in the research to commercialization continuum, including economic and Schuylkill Yards, which Brad referred to as our joint project with Brandywine Realty Trust, community engagement, talent pipelines, and professional education. What I actually do is I help companies to navigate Drexel so that they can connect to the various groups. I create frameworks that bridge the practice between industry and university, and I go to meetings like these so that folks in the community know what we do. I'll talk a little bit later on about our footprint and our university and some of the demographics as we move through our time together.
Perfect. Somebody's taking back their materials. We were going to use those. Maybe not. Lori.
Yes, hi, I'm Laurie Achtman. I'm the Chief Marketing, Communications, and Program Officer with the Penn Center for Innovation. I came to Penn 3 years ago to help launch our Center of Innovation, which is basically Penn's commitment to focusing and scaling all of our commercialization activity. So that involves industry partnerships, licensing, creating startups. We now run a number of programs and accelerators to help these early stage ideas from faculty and students kind of emerge more proactively into the marketplace. And most symbolically, I was very involved in the planning and launch of the Pennovation Center, which is a new incubator and co-working space adjacent to Penn, where a number of our startups, corporate partners, and VCs are now housed in kind of this innovation, stew, coming up with new ideas that can grow the economy here in Philly. So, and a lot of what these guys do also.
All right, so let's probe that for a second, Lori, then we'll come back this way. Talk a little bit about Pennovation and the companies and the folks who are there. Are they in flip-flops and jeans? What are they doing there?
Yeah, so Penn, I don't know what you said.
You said get close.
Okay, so We have some amazing companies there. Some of them, and the top floor actually of the center is our robotics lab. So that's filled with grad students and faculty who are building drones and doing like amazing robotic things. And what's great about the Pennovation Center is it truly is this mix of disciplines. So we have a number of startups there that are spin-outs from Penn, either student or faculty spin-outs, some out of the robotics lab on the 3rd floor. Penn, as you may know, is very heavy in the life sciences because we have a huge medical infrastructure. So we have wet labs in there that are very affordable. So we have a number of life science startups. We have a number of robotics startups. We actually have a venture capital group in there that invests solely in Penn-affiliated technology. We have some corporate partners in there. Later on, both virtually and in reality. So the Hershey Company is a corporate partner that wanted an innovation lab there so they could work closely with the Penn community to fill their innovation pipeline. We're also working with Comcast around the Internet of Things. Brian from Comcast spoke this morning, and I can talk more about that from a Penn perspective. So this is really our platform for partnership and engagement with the private sector. We want to test things. We've got faculty who want to work with you and students doing startup challenges, doing sponsored research, and Penn wasn't really an easy place to do that before. And so this is really Penn's approach to being more like MIT or Stanford, that we're not just about basic research. We want to grow ventures that, can contribute to the economy here, and think of faculty as like the original entrepreneurs. I mean, they have to be entrepreneurial to get federal grant money. They are at universities because they don't want to be in a corporate environment. So in many ways, they run their own business, and they're thinking of new ideas every day. So I think between Penn, Drexel, CHOP, UCity has become more of this place for ideas that generate and actually leave the walls of academia and become the little startup that grows into a real thing.
And this is, just to add that, I mean, this is not us believing our own, am I allowed to curse in here? Bullshit. There was that's a legal term for you guys. There was a Brookings study that just got released a week or two ago that sort of bolsters the point that Lori was just making, that Debbie's about to make, which is that when they looked at Philadelphia, which typically folks that grow up around here have a bit of a negative connotation to the city, when they looked at Philadelphia, yes, we've got a very high poverty rate, way too high, and so that needs to be addressed. But when they looked at University City and Pennovation and what's going on in that corridor that you're seeing on the map, they were extraordinarily impressed and thought that that corridor had the capability to transform both neighborhoods and the rest of the city through innovation, the stuff that you all do or play in that space. And so, again, I would commend that study to you. It's worth taking a look at because they believe that there are key attributes to the city, in particular in University City, that create that type of stew, that type of environment where innovation can flourish. And given the institutions that are there, the three of them in particular, the ability to use that technology to further employment opportunities in the economy. Debbie, why don't you talk a little bit about your footprint with Drexel and kind of what you're looking at or what the university is looking at from a kind of usage perspective and looking into the future?
Great. So Drexel has always been an applied research institution since it was founded in 1891. It's in its DNA. Little quick fact is the barcode that UPS used originally to identify things was created at Drexel. So there's three things generally that we do: applied research, experiential learning, and some of you may actually be familiar with our co-op program that embeds externships into the curriculum, and community engagement. The campus, our footprint reflects that. 24,000 students in 14 schools and programs from 50 states and 130 countries. We're located on a very small area where all of this is happening, 74 acres that roughly run between Chestnut and Ray Street between 30th and 32nd. But to Brad's point about community, we also exist in West Philadelphia through a Dornsice Center for Community Life, which is at 35th and Race. And that's become what we call an urban extension. It's a place where we can look at the issues, including smart cities, that bridge the gap between the underserved community in which we're located and all of the coolest technology things that are going on in University City. We actually have 3 incubators currently on campus. The first is called the IC at 3401. It's actually in a building that's owned by the Science Center. I don't know whether it's part of the 74 acres or not. That wasn't really clear to me, but in any event, it is a place where very cool companies that are formed at Drexel are located. Student companies can be there and companies from the community. They've had tremendous success in getting follow-on funding as a result of their residency in the incubator. There's mentorship, there's programs. It's an interactive, dynamic place where companies can learn from each other and from all the resources that exist in University City. You may be familiar with a program called Dream It Ventures. It's an accelerator that has its headquarters in Philadelphia. It's located around the world, and their headquarters are there. So when they run their 10-week cohorts, people are coming through the cracks in that space because there's so much going on. We also have a student incubator on campus that works with companies, both student and alumni companies, to accelerate them. And the third incubator we have is in what you may know as the former Bulletin Building. I call it 3101 Market Street, or 3025 Market Street. And it's called Philadelphia Next Stage. It does focus on life sciences. It has facilities for medical tech development. There are boutique advisories, investment venture companies, and startup companies in the medical technology space, and a whole host of programming and consulting services that go with that. So that's where we are now. Do you want me to talk a little bit about where we're going, or you want to move into that?
Hold on, we'll come back to that. I have a quick
great.
question for the audience, though. How many people remember the Bulletin? It's like the older people in the crowd. And of those folks who remember the Bulletin, how many people were paper boys or girls? Okay, those are the successful folks in the crowd. Paper people tend to be successful. So there's a book out there about that. Back to you, Peter. So what's going on at CHOP, and where do you see that footprint expanding, and/or what are you focusing on?
Sure.
That was English.
Sure. So CHOP's expansion, aggressive expansion, started back in about 2000. And we moved our campus from a small location, started in the late 1800s, across the river over to where we exist today in the 70s. And so at that point, it started out as a 125-bed hospital. We're now up to a total footprint of 7 million square feet, about 1.5 million of that in the suburbs, but the rest of it all in University City. And so it happened rapidly, if you think that we started this expansion in 2000. And the interesting thing about CHOP, if you're not familiar with it, is that while we provide primary care and we provide even specialty care in the community, a lot of the procedures and the care that we offer can't be found anywhere else in the country or the world. And so to that end, what we're seeing on our main campus are the higher acuity cases. So children who are coming in to Philadelphia, to our hospital for complex procedures that may keep them there for extended periods of time. And so because there are not children's hospitals, very specialized area of healthcare, many of them throughout the country, we find ourselves at a high demand. And what's been most interesting over the last year for us is that where our census would sort of ebb and flow, really as a result of the flu season, we've actually been at about 100% and over 100% census for a whole year. So what that says is that with 538 beds, we're out of room. And so we're in a position where we need to grow, and that's our next big decision is how and where do we grow. We've been building these suburban locations to try to take some of the pressure off our main campus, but we continue to see the pressure on the main campus. We just recently opened up a new research facility, clinical research facility, which is office-based research across the eastern side of the Schuylkill River, the Roberts Center for Pediatric Research. This is a new campus for us that we built. We have about 1,000 employees who have just moved into that building. And it's also put us in this position where we're doing placemaking. I think one of the great features that you're seeing from Drexel and you're seeing from Penn is a real investment in placemaking in our communities, and so that we can be woven into the fabric of the communities around us. And so we've done that too with this new research facility, because as we build these research facilities, we have to accommodate the researchers that we want to attract and recruit to Philadelphia. So this has been an opportunity for us to do that, and has led to some real economic growth in the area. And the last thing that I'll say is that we've been really investing in entrepreneurship and innovation and our tech transfer functions. And what we've done is that we've opened up the idea of bringing innovation to the table to all of our employees throughout the organization. So whether you're in corporate services or you're in clinical care or research, if you have a great idea, we now have the ability to be able to vet projects that potentially could be commercialized down the road. So a lot of exciting things happening on that front.
It's fantastic. So 1,000 new employees at the Roberts Center, and going across the Schuylkill to expand almost University City eastward. Any additional plans on that side of the river, or too early to tell?
Too early to tell.
Or you won't tell. Okay, no worries. That's all good.
Brad, I was just going to
jump in.
say that in response to what Peter said, is one of the other follow-on activities from all the great things that the CHOP is doing is that through some of their innovation plans, they are spinning out companies. So there has been a lot of publicity around a company called Spark Therapeutics that I believe started with technology from Children's, but it creates place-making opportunities for places like Schuylkill Yards and Hughes City Square, and it hires all the people that were graduating from Penn and Drexel and all the other great universities in the region, and it creates new research opportunities. So there becomes sort of this loop between and among all the different anchor institutions in University City that fuel this economic growth opportunity.
I think that's spot on.
Thank you.
Lori, can you just add on to that? What have you seen with Pennovation opening up on that east side? Are you seeing opportunity there that hadn't been there before, or is it you guys are in an oasis? What's going on?
Yeah, so, and just to elaborate on the point that Debbie just made, one of the faculty co-founders who has IP that was critical to Spark has now started her newest startup called Limelight Bio, which is based in the Pennovation Center. So one of the things we're starting to see in Philadelphia is faculty founding multiple companies. So no matter what happens with the first company, Spark is a great success story. They've gotten the commercialization bug. They see the value of getting their ideas to market, and especially to patients, because a lot of these ideas involve cures, but many of them also involve connected devices and things that support smart cities. There's a huge economic and social benefit to those types of ideas as well. The great thing about the Pennovation Center is now Penn actually has our own place to capture these people and keep them in Philly. So our experience at Penn was, we're a globally prominent university, not that others here are not, but a lot of our students traditionally were headed to New York or headed to Boston or headed to the West Coast. If you talk to any engineering undergraduate at Penn now, they're likely to be interning during the summer at Facebook, Twitter, Google, Tesla. So it's hard for us to keep them in Philadelphia. But now that we have the Pennovation Center, I think they have a very visible place where they can participate in the startup ecosystem that they weren't sure really existed in Philadelphia. And now we have multiple case studies of kids graduating, starting a company, and going to the Pennovation Center because they're kind of like, oh, I can actually do this here, and it's cheaper and easier, and I can bootstrap this thing and kind of live off credit cards for a little while to get this thing going. So that part is really great. In terms of what's going to happen around the Pennovation Center, it's a 52-acre site. And so this is really Penn's foray into, I would say, a formerly industrial area called Grays Ferry, which has been underinvested in. And the Pennovation Center, we're hoping, could be the center of an innovation campus. So as the companies in the center, the idea is they're going to grow up and out. So they're not permanent tenants. You know, we want them to grow. So once they get to 10 people, they're probably not going to want to be in a co-working kind of innovation space. They're going to need kind of more conventional space. So we are starting the plan for converting buildings, adding buildings around the Pennovation Center, so it does become a true campus. I don't know if you're familiar with the Navy Yard, but kind of a similar concept, except much closer to University City. So,
which is a super point on the 52 acres.
Yeah.
52 acres can obviously hold a lot of space. So as those companies get bigger and they get funded, you can build additional lab space and or actual office space or manufacturing space. So Deb, I'm going to turn to you in a second, but there's been mention of the University Science Center. So the Science Center is a bit, I don't want to say unique, but it's a bit novel in Philadelphia because it's a collaborative effort. That word, of course, was used this morning, gets tossed around a lot, but it's truly a collaborative effort of all the major universities in and around Philadelphia, where there is space for them to get together, share ideas, and then incubate some of these ideas into reality. And so there's kind of dry space, wet space, but it's down kind of in this area. So we're talking about across the river, but it's also in and through here, where there's plans at the moment for over 4 million square feet of development. There's at about $250 a square foot, you're talking about $1 billion of additional investment by just the University Science Center. And so they've kicked off their first building, which is 3675, which is a tower that's coming out of the ground now. It's about 340,000 square feet. They'll move from there to a residential building, which is another 300,000 square feet, and they'll kick that off in the first quarter of 2018. And so you're just talking about a massive amount of not only construction jobs, but long-term jobs once those buildings are built. So there's 15 buildings now. They will add another 10 buildings to that area. And so again, that is a massive amount of footage, 4 million square feet in and of itself. But they are not alone. Who else is joining them, Deb? If I can figure this out, we'll even show pictures.
So what's really interesting to me, and I'm going to show you a few pictures, is that we have 3 ongoing projects in University City at one time, and each has a very different philosophy. So our project is called Schuylkill Yards, and I guess in comparison to what Lori described, we have fewer acres. It's 14 acres altogether. But I am told, and I don't know who makes these decisions, but it is some of the most valuable real estate in the United States because it's located adjacent to Amtrak's 30th Street station, a little bit west and a little bit north of there. We have a partnership with Brandywine Realty Trust. It's called Schuylkill Yards. The partnership is we have the land, they have the expertise in real estate development, and together we have a shared vision for an innovation district. So I'd like to just show you a little bit about what it looks like, and then I want to tell you why it's an innovation district, or why it will be an innovation district. So,
you want to drive?
Sure, if I know which button to push. So this is what we referred to before as the Bulletin Building, and that's what it looks like now. Oh, I'm loud, so I don't always need this. Okay, so that's what it looks like now, and the plan is for it to look like this eventually. So that is actually going to be the first project. In between 30th Street Station and this building, there will be a public realm, because the goal is, and apparently the history is when Philadelphia was formed, there were supposed to be 6 squares, and there are only 5 or 7, and there's only 6. So this is going to be the final square in the plan, and a way to welcome those who come through 30th Street Station to Philadelphia. You may know this building, Furness, famous architect. That's what it looks like now, right on Drexel's campus. I want to say it's at about 32nd and Market, but it's going to change. There are going to be a bunch of buildings around it. I mentioned before that our footprint extends not just to main campus, but to the community in which we are located. And this is our Dornsife Center at 35th and Race. And one of the things that we think about as we develop the real estate adjacent to the campus is what does that mean and how do we look at the inclusivity of the community around us. This is 30th Street Station. And that's a rendering of what it might look like years from now. And I know that the presentations before this talked about driverless cars and connected mobility, and I think there will be some serious questions as we move into the future about how many cars and how many bicycles and multimodal transportation and what that means for the cities and IoT. What I think is interesting in our approaches is we don't see this as incubation space and graduation space and lab space. Our philosophy that innovation is bred from diversity. So we don't see it as just a real estate play. Our focus is how do you use the space and create a program that creates innovation and helps offices like ours that look at engaging with industry in research, tech commercialization, accelerating technology into startups and into big companies. How do we create program that addresses those issues? So we look at who, and in this new space, about 2/3 of it, I think it's like 5.9 million square feet, which is like a lot of 9 and 10 foot floor buildings. But we look at it as a mix of space for office, which is innovation, academic labs, and established companies, retail, and residential. Because the philosophy is live, learn, work, and play. You bring all these people who are very different from different types of companies together, and that's how you get innovation. But we also think about the program and how you're connecting the people that exist in this space. So, for example, IoT. We are exploring, I think you heard earlier this morning about MachineQ and some of the cool stuff that Comcast is doing with LoRa. And we're thinking about how do you convert space into a live-learn laboratory? So it's not just about what applications enable the services in this space, but how do you use this infrastructure to build new things and connect people in new and different ways. We think about energy efficiency and what does it mean to have a microgrid and how do you use the data, and think about the fact that we have Penn and we have Penn Medicine, we have Children's and we have Wistar and we have University Science Center and we have Monell and we have University of the Sciences and Drexel. What about if we could share all that data? What about if we had the programs and the IoT and the connectivity to do that? Think of what we could accomplish individually as a community. And I know that we're going to talk a little bit more about smart cities, so I'll sort of stop there, give the microphone back, and just let you know that we have other ongoing projects. We're working on a school, we're working on daycare.
So it's a boring life she lives, obviously. So you just think about if they're half right, which they're not half right, they are totally right, but if they're half right, between the Science Center at 4 million square feet, and what Drexel and Brandywine are doing, which is another potentially 6 million square feet. That's 10 million square feet, about $2.5 billion worth of investment within like a 6-block radius. And when you think about 10 million square feet, to give you context, the CBD, the Central Business District, is about 28 million square feet. So we're going to add another 10 million square feet. Now, it's not going to happen in one day, but over the next 10 years, you're talking about a massive amount of development, which hopefully anchors people to the community. So live, work, play becomes very relevant, starts to address some of Lori's concerns vis-a-vis our young talent drain, where they learn all this great stuff and then they leave. So how do we keep them here? What Lori's doing at Pennovation and kind of the additional 52 acres that are there have that capability of creating that anchor set, as well as the 7 million square feet that CHOP is expanding into and beyond. So really fascinating area of the city. Final shots, one. So Peter, final thoughts for the audience, and then we'll go open to Q&A. And you guys will have a question, hopefully.
Sure. I think one of the themes that we're hearing here is how through collaboration there's a lot that we can do. I think one of the special things about University City is that these anchor institutions really do work well together and are glued together. And if you haven't been out to University City, I really encourage you to go take a look and see what we're accomplishing by way of not just new construction,
by way of it being a vibrant center for restaurants, for shopping, for living. And one of the important things that I think is very special about our group of institutions is the commitment that we have to the community surrounding us. And each of these organizations have really been committed to supplier diversity programs, to workforce development programs, because it's important to remember that we do have real economic challenges in Philadelphia. And as anchor institutions, I think we're working to rise to the occasion to help lift up those communities around us, because as we all grow, we're going to need more employees. And we really are committed to making sure that those employees are coming from our communities. And so this is one of the special things that really makes up University City that we're all proud to be working on together.
That's fabulous. Debbie, any thoughts?
You took my line.
Well, you helped me out on Spark, so.
So I was going to say, it really has changed in the time that I've lived in Philadelphia. So that University City is a community. And now more than ever, you see, we are involved in collaborative research with my neighbors at the table and with others. You have organizations like University City District that bring everybody together. We actually have some trees on Market Street. We have some restaurants, we need more. But you're starting to see a community of collaborators and a place where people that are attracting companies and businesses. It's really exciting to see this happen, and really amazing to see what the next 10 years will bring.
That's really the last 7 years. I mean, it's not like eons. Laura, final thoughts?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I can think of to add, since you guys summed it up so well, is you really should think of University City as a test bed, because we're filled with lots of people who on a daily basis are trying new things, discovering new things, and that infuses kind of the management of our organizations too. I feel like I've had the opportunity since I got to Penn to test out a bunch of new things, pilot programs. We weren't quite sure what the convention center would be like when we were designing and building it, and so I think the institutions themselves are getting more eager to pivot and really build out kind of this infrastructure. And so as you're developing technologies, or you have service offerings in the private sector that are new and different and can create a smart city, connected city, I think Philadelphia could be a great test bed for that. And a huge shout out to Comcast, who I think is a really important partner and anchor for all this work. We're doing a really neat collaborative project around Machine IQ, and they gave students and faculty actually the opportunity to compete, to work with them, developing ideas on the platform. And so that's the type of kind of collaboration that we can do, are eager to do, that can, I hope, be beneficial to you. So that's about it.
That's super. Again, just to echo Lori's comments, Comcast, for all the nonsense you hear about like your personal service in your house, and that's a separate topic, they are an extraordinary corporate citizen for the community. Their new building will be it's 1 million square feet, that new building, which is, again, a massive amount of space dedicated to technology and innovation. And so the fact that they're doing that and they planted their flag in Philadelphia and they're Philadelphians means a lot to this city. So you're here. Questions? Wow, we do have a question.
Do your cell phones work in your buildings?
Do your cell phones work in your buildings?
Serious question. Your beautiful new buildings.
It's funny. I'm in the left bank, which used to be a torpedo factory, so we have some of the thickest walls to be found anywhere. And our cell phones do work, but it can be a little tricky. But there is an area of West Philly where there's some network that makes it hard to get cell phone service.
It's the Russian network, I think.
Yeah, I don't know.
Do your cell phones work?
Coincidentally, Laurie and I are on flip sides of the same building, and we don't have a cell phone problem. I have problems with Drexel IoT, but with my cell phone, I'm fine.
Okay. Peter?
Mine works.
Garage?
I think we've had to develop the infrastructure to make sure, because obviously we're delivering healthcare. So.
And that's the follow-up question. Thank you. I set you up. How much of the network and technology infrastructure is part of this planning that goes into each of these big buildings and all that you do?
I mean,
I wouldn't hear that. How much planning goes into the technology and the infrastructure in these new buildings, in particular on the medical side?
Yeah, very, very much. I mean, if you think of, the importance of electronic medical records and cybersecurity and our way to communicate with families and amongst ourselves, and we've invested a tremendous amount of money in infrastructure. Plus, we have the network of our locations among the 2 states, and so that's a very big piece of our investment because it has to be perfect.
I don't think you can create 21st century space unless you're thinking about the technology infrastructure. And this, I wouldn't underestimate the security aspects of that, particularly when you're dealing with data. In the case of Peter, proprietary health data.
Absolutely. Cybersecurity is huge. Question back?
Yeah. So I think you're tilting the future of the city around tech, whether it's robotics or IoT or e-medicine and beyond, obviously. But keeping in this context, after you said, what is sort of what's the approach? So somebody who's not in the academic community, who's not in the research space, what's the best way to approach and start to engage some of the dynamic folks who are out there?
So the question is, for somebody that's not per se in the academic space, what's the best way to approach? So if somebody has good technology, they have an idea, what's the best way to approach folks like this? Lori wants to start.
My organization was basically created to be a front door to the external world. And in particular, before we were created, leadership at Penn interviewed a lot of people, stakeholders in the community, including industry partners, to get feedback on how to make it easier to work with us. Penn is a very decentralized place. Think of J&J. So, all the schools kind of have their own domains. So it got very confusing for folks who wanted to come in and partner, like where do you start, where's the front door? So if you do want to come in and partner, PCI is now the front door. There's other ways in, but we can facilitate, and we're the only entity that can do this, any partnership with the private sector. So ultimately it's going to come through our door even if it starts there. And I think the big change is we're trying to start the conversation. We're trying to reach out to industry partners and get in the conversation and find out what their needs and wants are, and if Penn could help them get there.
As a follow-up though, do you want an email? Do you want a card? What's the best way?
Anyway, I'm very accessible electronically more than by phone. So, and I have great colleagues who work across the schools at Penn who are very close to the faculty. And so we also have a very good sense of who's out there needing to collaborate, wanting to collaborate. And Penn is a very broad and interdisciplinary school. So ultimately you're going to find what you're looking for. And I'm not trying to over or outpitch Drexel because they have their own kind of thing.
Right, well, you made it really easy for me because Lori and I play similar roles at our respective institutions. And I mentioned the research to commercialization continuum, which can involve a bunch of different things. It can involve research, it can involve licenses, but it also involves academics and students. So while both organizations work with large companies like Comcast, we work with companies, all different kinds of companies, and not just technology companies. So for example, we have a group in business analytics that runs projects through the classroom. We put together interdisciplinary teams. I worked with a group that matched up gaming experts with computer science experts to create health games. We have companies that are trying to solve a particular problem, and they'll work with a senior design team. So there are opportunities to connect with innovation in universities at all different thresholds and with all different types of professionals. And universities will always talk to companies, so all you need to do is contact us.
So I was going to say, so how do they contact you? Email, phone call, smoke signal, what's the best way?
Phone is probably not the best way. I've never tried smoke signal, but email usually works.
Email usually works, avoid the smoke signal. Peter?
Sure, and for us, I think the opening of our Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation has really given us an opportunity to have an appropriate gateway for people to come in, to be vetted, to be triaged if it's another area of the organization that might be a better fit, but it's been a really fantastic resource for us to engage with the tech community. So certainly an email would be fine, and happy to pass along that information.
Just mention that group again one more time so that folks know.
Sure, it's the Office of Entrepreneurship and Innovation at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
It's a really short email address. Any other questions? It's a timid crowd. All right, good enough. Panelists, thanks a lot, appreciate it.
Just Ellen Huang, okay. Ellen Huang, Program Manager for Innovation Management.
Okay. Ellen, describe the Smart City Initiative in Philadelphia. In general. It's going to get cut. It's not a linear thing.
Okay. Smart City PHL is the City of Philadelphia's official Smart City initiative. It is housed in the Office of Innovation and Technology, which is the City of Philadelphia's central IT department. And through this initiative, we are looking to strategically position ourselves to be able to better support our departments so that as a whole, as our city continues to grow and begin to adopt smart technology, we can continue to be able to support the sustainability of our city.
Let my watch.
It's all right.
Okay, so talk about the importance of public-private cooperation.
It's really important for us to be able to develop strong partnerships with our private corporations because, like many other cities, Philadelphia is going to run into challenges with funding, sustaining these efforts, and being able to support the scaling of a lot of the pilot opportunities that are currently being presented to us. And so as we continue to develop partnerships, we hope that we can be able to identify identify partnerships that are going to help us further the work. But okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Go ahead. It's really important for us to build strong relationships with the private sector because we want to make sure that as we pursue public-private partnerships, we are aligning with companies that share the same core values as the City of Philadelphia, are thinking about our residents, our businesses, and the future of the city as much as we are. And public-private partnerships are going to be really critical in allowing the city to be able to not only pilot, but to scale and sustain these larger efforts moving forward.
Can you give a couple of examples of existing smart city projects and departments and how they've evolved and where you think they'll?
Sure. So in the City of Philadelphia, there are a number of different departments that are pursuing smart city projects. For example, in the water department, they are adopting automated metering infrastructure systems, and that'll streamline the processes in how they are understanding water usage in different buildings across Philadelphia, being able to do early onset leak detection, and that'll also help us with our business processes and billing instead of having to do that retroactively. In addition to that, they also, through their Green Stormwater Infrastructure Program, they are embedding new sensor technology to understand exactly what kind of data they might be able to collect. How is that going to impact the future sustainability? So. Ultimate retiring, like, right? Vacationing and retiring into like the energy.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Through the Office of Sustainability, we have a unit that is strictly focusing on energy usage and energy management for the city of Philadelphia. And they are going to be rolling out building management systems that are going to streamline information from the energy usage that's happening in municipal buildings. And what we hope to realize through that is to be able to improve our energy usage and also be able to adopt better practices on how to save on our energy in the city. We also have departments in public health that are focused on environmental sensing so that we can better understand the pollutants that are in outdoor and indoor air. And we want to make sure that we're really thinking about the health of our citizens as well. In addition to all of this, Philadelphia has a long history in digital inclusion work, and we have a network of over 50 public computing centers called Key Spots, and that is managed through our Office of Adult Education and our Parks and Recreation Department. And we're hoping that we can continue building off of these public computing centers that are providing free Wi-Fi, computer training and software training to marginalized communities, and build off of this community so that we can continue to support folks who are generally disconnected and have low levels of access to the internet, and being able to provide workforce development training, supporting our young people and making sure they can get their work done for school, and also being prepared for 21st century jobs moving forward.
Explain the mayor's role and how he's kind of being a cheerleader, how he's helping drive.
Sure. In 2016, we welcomed a new mayor, Mayor Jim Kenney, and he has been such an excellent leader for the city of Philadelphia. He has a long history working in city council, and so he has really heard the outcries from the public over the many years that he's been in office. And now as a mayor, he's really focused on making sure that the outcomes of all Philadelphians, that is our residents, our businesses, visitors, and future Philadelphians, are going to be better supported through increased public safety, improving our education system, and also making sure that as a government we're being more collaborative and more efficient so that the services that we're providing are going to be better streamlined, and that we can also improve our communication to the public.
Any other soundbite kind of things you want to just say about the initiative?
Sure, I'll give a shout out to Philly. Philadelphia is in a wonderful position to be able to really lead in the smart cities work that is happening both locally, nationally, and globally. We really believe in the fact that we have such rich history in Philadelphia. We are the city of many firsts, and we know that in many ways we are behind, but in a lot of ways there's so many opportunities here. And over the course of my own work here, it's been so exciting to see how many people in the community, both from the private sector, public sector, communities, neighborhood associations, they're all really coming together to do this work as one city. And we hope that the vision for Smart City will be one that will continue to support this level of collaboration moving forward.
Okay, so just say your name and your company and role.
Sure. Brian Wachowski. I help lead product strategy for a new venture at Comcast called MachineQ.
Okay, and what is MachineQ?
MachineQ is a new venture designed to help get data from the physical world back to the digital world. We're currently deploying a low-powered wide area network in Philadelphia, Chicago, and San Francisco, and we're looking to expand that quickly. We think that this technology is super relevant across a number of industries, but we're especially focused on smart cities and helping cities become smarter and more efficient.
And so Comcast is known as the fiber and cable company. What's it like trying to work within Comcast to muster this effort?
It's really great. I mean, we wouldn't have gotten half as far as we've gotten without the larger support of Comcast. So on the technical side, our expertise is drawn from the larger pool of Comcast and the years and years we have running one of the biggest networks in the world. And beyond that, our deployment strategy is really hinged on our deep fiber and coax network, both from an efficiency and economies of scale standpoint. But beyond that, Comcast has garnered such goodwill through Internet Essentials, partnering with universities, supplying municipal fiber and broadband, that we having those relationships at our kind of disposal has been really critical at us getting awareness and support from potential clients.
And what does smart city mean to you?
That a great question. Always a broad definition, but I think for us, it's at its core is connecting all the disparate devices, sensors, and machines back to the digital space and allowing city and citizens to make better decisions and a better quality of life for their residents with that data.
The University of Pennsylvania said that you guys had a partnership or are working together. Describe that use case or what you're going at.
Sure, we have a team that's centered on entrepreneurial engagement. They've been working with Penn and the Pennovation Center, and they helped MachineQ, our team, and Penn build an IoT challenge where students, faculty, and other entrepreneurs associated with Penn were able to compete for an IoT prize that we sponsored. It still hasn't been officially announced, but we had really good participation where we at MachineQ helped those participating entities integrate our low-power wide area network technology, LoRa, into their products, and we helped them harden them, work on the idea, the business plan, and hopefully when we announce the winners very shortly, we'll be working with them to help commercialize their product even further.
And explain what LoRa is and why you chose to use LoRa as the engine.
Sure. This new emerging technology family called low-power wide area networks. There's a couple of flavors: RPMA, Sigfox, and LoRa. We chose LoRa, primarily because of the technical specs, that it is so efficient from a range perspective, propagation, and it is also very efficient from a cost of deployment. We're able to deploy our network infrastructure very efficiently, and the core kind of silicon that you have to integrate into products is very cost effective. But most importantly was the ecosystem, and LoRa is an open platform, open architecture, meaning anyone off the street can get access to it. They can join the LoRa Alliance and help influence how the technology evolves. And so we think that over time that'll create a richer ecosystem. There's already 35 global carriers that are deploying LoRa. There's 500 members, and we think that's only going to continue to accelerate over time.
All right, so give me one or two bullets on your value prop or what you see as the real driver, which you might be able to solve.
Yeah, the key for us is there are hundreds of millions of devices today that are out in the wider world that aren't being connected. And that's either because they're too far from connectivity, connectivity is too expensive, or battery life is too intense and it's basically uneconomical to connect that device. LoRa's core value prop is that it can get very, very far, very cheaply, and it can get deep into buildings because it operates at a sub-gigahertz frequency. And the cost of ownership is low because the module that you can put in a device is $7 today, getting much cheaper. Then the connectivity costs are roughly 1/10 of what a competing cellular solution might look like, and the battery life is extremely long. So that LoRa signal to get that data back to the network is very efficient. So across those three factors, we're making the decision for businesses, enterprises, governments to connect their devices, make that less of a challenge from a cost and implementation standpoint.
Good. Any final thought or something you want to?
No, I think this was a fantastic event. We're going to Smart Cities events. Feels like almost every week, but this was great. Really good panels, really well moderated. We're certainly going to attend other events going forward, but I think certainly achieve the goal of getting a lot of stakeholders, a lot of competitive overlap in the same room, talking about the bigger challenges kind of facing the broader, wireless industry.
Shit, I just did. Say your name and title.
Kurt Jacobs, JMA, Director of Solutions and Markets.
Okay, Kurt, talk a little bit about what is a smart city?
A smart city is building a community where the most important part is the people and that they get the services that they want efficiently, effectively, where you're meeting basic human needs for transportation, for their quality of life, sorry. Okay. Can I start again? What's a smart city? What's a smart city? A smart city is really a community of people that are getting basic services in a way that they didn't get them before. Usually low friction, but you're still meeting basic needs. And technology is an enabler that people can use, and it needs to be frictionless, ubiquitous, and connected. And now you'll be connecting things, that may have been previously connected through old networks, or new things and new information that then is aggregated with the data, analyzed, and then put back to the humans so they can take action on it, or they can learn from it, and it leads to a transformation in the way people can live.
Talk a little bit about how you partner with other companies like Big Belly to create solutions.
We partner with companies like Big Belly that has a great waste management IoT solution where they're getting positioned in a lot of high traffic areas that also need densification of the network. One of the big problems in cities are the siting of all the technology infrastructure that we need to enable the smart city. So by working with Big Belly, we're using the real estate that they're using with their cabinets, adding a cabinet that basically blends in with a very, very small footprint to put easily accessible equipment there to provide the technology so you're not hanging a lot of things on poles. Because we find that concealment of infrastructure is really important for the perception of how the technology is deployed in a smart city.
And then say, just give me a sense, it includes street furniture in it, and Big Belly's an example of street furniture, and we're trying to utilize that for aesthetics.
Okay, yeah. We have a partnership with Big Belly that's one of the leaders in waste management using smart technology. And their trash bins are part of this street furniture that's deployed and sited, a necessary utility within the high density areas and parks and other public areas. We are able to put technology infrastructure inside that already connected infrastructure and street furniture to conceal it, so we have a much cleaner installation, not hanging a lot of things off poles and access and creating a lot of clutter in the smart city, and making it so the technology is just ubiquitous and there for the community.
Give me, so give me like a fourth utility statement. Wireless is the fourth utility.
Yeah, we're seeing from everything from the building owners to the venues to the public and smart city communities that wireless connectivity is becoming the fourth utility. It's a utility and it's a basic need and service that everyone has to have, and it's an enabler for everything to happen. Just like electricity is and water for communities in order to have a quality of life, wireless connectivity is for everything from smartphones to connected devices is a necessary way to make all the smart city infrastructure work together. It gets rid of a lot of wires and connectivity problems, and it supports mobility and a shared resources society that we're all striving to achieve.
Talk about how you work with Laura. Let's just do Laura. You're working within the IoT framework. There's lots of protocols. Talk about the protocols and how you're trying to, beyond cellular, you drill into those.
At JMA, we don't believe that it's just going to be one technology. While we specialize in cellular technology, densification, and coverage, particularly for in-building, underground, smart venues, there's also new technologies in the unlicensed spectrum or the low-power wide area network technology for small sensors. Those sensors can be very low cost, they can be battery powered, and they provide data that we didn't have before. But in many of the use cases, particularly in smart city, in order to get value out of those sensors and to have a transformational outcome, you need to get the user involved. And the most ubiquitous user interface is the smartphone. That is that broadband coverage, and it's a place where you can combine a lot of the data and information so people can get the information, get the data, have a transformative outcome to how they actually do things, what they learn from transportation systems, how they get rid of waste in the city. So it's not just one technology, it's a combination of a broad spectrum of technology combined together to really impact the user at the end.
Explain why densification is important.
Densification is important in particularly cities. because there are more and more things being connected. We have a divergence in the type of connection in that there's a lot more devices. Some of them are very low speed, but there's a lot of them, so there's a scalability. And then there's an increasing demand for things like video and other high bandwidth applications on smartphones or on autonomous vehicles or other platforms. So that's driving the demand for bandwidth. And in a cellular technology in particular, densifying is a way that we can increase the scale of things and the volume of content that will be connected.
Okay, so go to whatever you're most comfortable. You want to, you know, something you would want, the soundbite-ish stuff that you'd like put in.
Yeah, okay. At JMA, we are working hard to bring a lot of the new technologies, both in broadband technology from the cellular bands with all the different carriers in a multi-carrier solution, to the public safety bands for public safety requirements, all the way to the narrowband technologies like Cat-M and narrowband IT. So we have an infrastructure that can support the diverse needs of devices and platforms and phones and tablets and other computing technology that's going to use the wireless infrastructure.
What's a heterogeneous network? So a HetNet is?
Yeah. A HetNet is a network that has multiple types of network connectivity. Everything could be from wired at the most basic to Wi-Fi, to cellular technology, to narrowband machine technology, to some of the new unlicensed spectrum or real high frequency spectrum technologies that are coming together. Now, from a user or device perspective, there might be some of those technologies that are preferred over others, but in many cases, you need to be able to operate seamlessly or in parallel across all these different types of network topologies and methodologies. So HetNet is building a network that provides a service to the customer that is very low friction and provides a seamless experience so all these devices and people can talk to one another.
Okay, good.
Yeah, at JMA we strongly believe in a converged core network where the network is going to support everything from multiple cellular carrier to multiple types of technology on a converged infrastructure while still supporting a very diverse set of endpoints and technologies on the edge and a centralized, controlled, and increasingly software network function virtualization on the back end, connecting back to back end services so we can have access to things like cloud analytics, cloud processes, and bring that back to the different devices and humans and users and devices that are on the network. And we believe that this will lead to transformative outcomes for the type of applications and solutions at a much lower cost.
I talked to Art King at SpiderCar, I don't know if you know him, this morning. So he's like the senior tech weenie, vice president or whatever over there. He's a great guy. So they have a new offering. It's a frequency agile small cell. What they really have is one small cell that can...
I gotta read. Now you're going to say your name and your time.
Hello, my name is Alexey Kurochkin, President and CEO of NXG.
Alexey, tell me what you like most about being part of the Wireless Infrastructure Association, and say that the Wireless Infrastructure Association is.
I like to be part of Wireless Infrastructure Association because it connects the people from my industry and lets me to interact with them and get all the new things that the industry coming up with. It's infrastructure, that's what we do. And we'd like to be able to learn this new and make new connections. It's a very dynamic industry. We were happy to meet new partners there.
Okay, now we're going to this. Okay, so Alexey, why is densification important of the networks?
The densification of the networks is important because the number of users and the number of data the users actually utilizing is increasing, and therefore the network has to get closer to the user and come down from the tower to be closer to the user, so it will be reusing the spectrum, which is very expensive asset.
And describe some of the types of projects that NXG works on.
We're working on the wireless integrator projects. We developing the indoor coverage, installing the DAS system, distributed antenna systems. We installing outdoor distributed antenna systems and the small cells throughout the cities to make sure that, again, to improve that densification, increase densification, and provide coverage and capacity, which is the most important, to the users on the street.
What's a HetNet?
HetNet, it's also a great conglomeration and the standardization body and society of folks from our industry to make sure, and there is a HetNet shows coming up as well, so which we'd like to be part of as well, is to make sure that we have figure out how to integrate into this network.
Any issue or comment you want to make in general about the industry or specialization, you know, PIM, I don't know, anything you want to pick out of forget PIM. But
Yeah, no, I understand.
5G, what's 5G and what you're seeing, 4G to 5G?
There's a lot of people talking about 5G these days, and rightfully so. This is the future that is coming. However, we're still busy implementing 4G, and we think that there's still a lot of people haven't seen the benefits of the 4G because they simply wasn't deployed. So the 5G is something that's coming up on the horizon, and we definitely tracking that progress into our hands. But meanwhile, we'll be busy deploying the 4G.
And any other comment or trend or something that interests you in the wireless?
About dense networks, anything?
Yeah,
we haven't talked about that.
Yeah, I'm not, go ahead.
Okay, so recently we become part of dense networks community, and that's a great place to be because that's where we see a combination and a great deal of collaboration between wireless network deployers and also the users like cities. What do they need? How they need it to be done. So that's where people learn from each other, of each other needs, and try to collaborate for a better, smoother experience for the users.
Okay, so let's see, I have one more question. So, okay, what is a smart city, and how does wireless impact it?
A smart city is, to me, is the city that actually automates a lot of things, and wireless is a great backbone and infrastructure for that automation. So you have whatever is happening in the city right now, you have to measure it and transport it sometimes and most of the times wirelessly. To the data center and then distributed from there as well.
Good. Okay. I got enough. Okay, first say your name and your title.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ray Hild, Area Vice President with JMA Wireless.
Okay. Ray, what do you like best about being part of the Wireless Infrastructure Association? Say WIA or Wireless.
Yeah, the WIA is an interesting organization because for two reasons. Mainly, one is the outreach that they do to the FCC and to Congress and the other political bodies. But secondly, they're pretty inclusive with their membership. Like any other organization, you get out of it what you put into it. So some of the white papers that we've been fortunate enough to be a part of and have authored and been published, we kind of see as beneficiary, not just for ourselves, but also for the community as a whole.
What's a HetNet?
Geez, it's kind of like asking, how you define interoperability. A lot of people have a lot of different opinions.
HetNet is?
Yeah, the HetNet forum would be pretty much all the technologies that you can put together to solve for bandwidth, whether it be cellular, Wi-Fi, what have you. And it's got to be dense to handle the kind of video and data capacity that we have today and going forward. So I kind of look at it this way: if you have a dartboard and the macro is the circumference of the dartboard. We got to throw darts and fill up every number, including triples and double 20s, and the bullseyes in order to satisfy what is a HETnet, based on the demand requirements for bandwidth in today's users.
How is in-building public safety being addressed these days?
It's today it's still a mishmash, Pete. There's 30+ thousand AHJs across the United States, and largely they adhere and abide by one of two governing body codes. But the problem that we face is that A, they have the power and the ability and typically execute on amendments and changes to it, which is very hard for us to track. And second to that, they're not really astute on the RF side of things. But we do need to respect the fact that, you know, they're putting their lives on the line to go into buildings and places that the average public doesn't normally travel to. Bottom line is we got to come to a place where it makes sense for the firefighter, it makes sense for the enterprise. We can enable these kind of coverage solutions to take care of our first responders.
Heard. So say your name and your title,
Leo Delgado, President of Converge Services, Inc., CSI.
so that the editor knows who he's looking at. Okay. So Leo, describe your clientele's problem with in-building communications.
The problems that my clients have that are real estate developers and builders is the fact that this whole public safety issue has been sprung upon them that really weren't ready for it. So, and their MEP professionals are not helping them, making sure those plans are in the initial documents with a low voltage. So they're forced to have to retrofit a brand new building because no one has told them about it, or different challenges with the different municipalities where they're building.
So what is the reaction of a building owner when he goes to get his CO and he's rejected, and then he finds out what it's going to cost him to retrofit?
They are in shock and disbelief because it's obviously a lot more than it would have been to plan for it ahead of time. They're also having to destroy it or a brand new building. So they're shocked, dismay, and they want to be able to get the CO so they can get their money and move their tenants or their buyers into the building.
Say something like, you know, the expense of putting the system in after construction is like 2 to 3 times. Just make that example.
One of the shocks that our builders, developer clients have is the fact that when presented with the fact that they didn't plan for it to begin with, that the cost to retrofit that building, a brand new building, is 2 to 3 times what it would have been had they planned for it prior to.
And how important is cellular coverage to the developer?
Cellular coverage is of utmost importance. The National Multi-Housing Council, which is an industry apartment association, has done studies where people will definitely move their tenants if they're not, if their cellular phones are not working in a property, okay, which means turnover and higher costs.
So how important is bringing fiber optics into an MDU or a community?
Fiber optics is obviously extreme importance. What we're trying to do is trying to use that fiber for many different uses or different strain of that fiber. So a lot of times our clients are being sold 6 or 8 different systems, anything from access control to voice, video, and data, to security system and CCTV. We're trying to bring it all together and try to bring the cost down.
So what does Converge Services do?
Converge Services Inc. or CSI represents the property owners in all things low voltage. And that obviously starts with a network to try to plan it properly, not have to retrofit or not have to buy it 6 or 8 variations of a network within a building.
And what advice do you give your communities and your building owners about their communications in general?
It's critical because, again, people demand that they have communications in their new home or their new apartment, and without any pre-planning, it becomes more difficult, more expensive, and you get frustrated tenants and owners that want to leave that property.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so I should be on my 7.
All right.
Ciao, bro.
Good to see you.
So, do you have any interesting thing from Comcast? I need to get to that.
He liked me, and
yeah,
like he wants to, which is I'd like to work.
Yeah.
WIA is hard.
Yeah.
harder for them.
So I'm just trying to get you pitching that. He's like talking about doing more of me. I'm like, oh, you got to work with.
Well, nobody's talking about what they're planning.
I'll take this. You put there. I'm gonna go decorate this.